Chapter 566. Mei Shuai-yen took a few more steps and suddenly stood on top of a snow-covered mountain rock. She raised her eyes and looked into the distance. She recited softly, "The plum's beard is not as white as the snow, but the snow is not as fragrant as the plum." What a great poem! It must have been hard on him to come up with such a good poem. Could it be that this poem was written for me? In her line of sight, there was a red plum blossom in full bloom. It was especially dazzling in the pure white snow. The bearded man beside Xiao Wei-cheng had a bad temper. This time, his nerves went up and down, tensed and relaxed. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. He felt a dull sound coming from his stomach. He almost spat out blood. Looking into his body, he realized that he had suffered internal injuries. This old man is suffocating. It's so torturous. I beg you, young Master Jun Mo Xia, who has disappeared without a trace, please come quickly. It looks like if you don't come, this little lady will not come in no matter what, underground. Jun Mo Xia had already adjusted himself to his best condition. His eyes were still closed, and they were still closed. Because, even if he opened his eyes, or revealed a sharp gaze, it would attract the vigilance of a superior supreme expert. He just closed his eyes and slowly walked around the ground, silently arriving below the body of the superior supreme expert. Once again feeling the slight pulse, Jun Moxie gritted his teeth and the blood of yellow flame pierced forward like lightning. Earth split. Snow split. Schwa. The blood of yellow flame easily pierced into the man's heart. 2 parts of the heart. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune flowed in unstoppably. At the same time his organs were destroyed, his dantian was also damaged. The internal energy had already rushed up to his throat. It controlled his movements and voice. Jun Mo Xia only felt a slight vibration from the sword. Then, a sharp spiritual force followed the sword and struck back. Jun Moxie secretly exclaimed, "That was close." If he had been the slightest bit careless, this sword could have killed him, but he would definitely have the strength to struggle, shout, or even counterattack. Even so, now that he had successfully taken control of his entire body, his remaining mental power was still able to counterattack. Although the final counterattack was powerful and incisive, the expert who was above the level of a supreme martial artist had, after all, lost the life force that he relied on to survive. This final spiritual attack could at most cause a little trouble for Jun Moxie, and there was nothing else. The long sword retracted with a whoosh. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh. Finally, he had successfully killed 3 people in a row. However, the 2 supreme martial artist experts did not retaliate even though they had all died in an instant. Only the last expert, who was above the supreme martial artist level, was able to retaliate at the last moment before his life was extinguished. Even if it was a counterattack of mental power, it couldn't be underestimated. What did this mean? What did it mean? Jun Moxie silently activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, and penetrated into the body of the expert above the level of a supreme martial artist. When he reached the dantian, he was shocked to discover that there was no golden elixir in this person's dantian. Instead, there was an extremely blurry nebula. It was obviously a strange shape after being destroyed by his own sword aura. Jun Mo Xia tried to restore them to their original state, and was finally able to confirm that these little nebulae were the product of the original pill-shaped object. It seemed that it was really different. According to the basics of cultivation, the golden elixir was the foundation of transforming the elixir into a nascent soul. But here, it had become a blurry nebula. Why was that? Jun Moxie's mind raced, and he immediately left this position without stopping. He rushed to the next ambush spot, the next triangle formation. Now was not a good time to analyze the cultivation method. It was more important to finish this battle quickly. Amidst the silence, 30 people were waiting to ambush Mei Shuai-yen, and Jun Moxie was quietly carrying out the assassination. After 3 successful assassinations, Hitman Jun had summed up a certain amount of experience. Even if it was a supreme martial artist or someone above the level of a supreme martial artist, as long as the method was correct, he could kill them all the same. The entire plan was perfect. First, Mei Xuan would appear, and create a strong pressure in front of the enemy, so that the enemy would not dare to act rashly. Then, Jun Moxie would be in charge of the assassination. This was the strategy that Jun Moxie had formulated. Facts had proven that this strategy was extremely useful, and the results were quite brilliant. Mei Xuan had only quietly stood a few feet away, and had already successfully attracted 200% of the attention of the Great Golden City's experts. In their minds, the biggest threat was Venerable Mei. As for Jun Moxie, these experts did not care about him at all. In their group, they believed that any random person could easily transform Jun Moxie into 16 different appearances. Therefore, they did not even consider where Jun Moxie had gone. Even if they did consider it, they would only think about why this kid had not come over yet. If he came over, then Venerable Mei would also come over. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have thought that someone could actually blend into the ground so perfectly to kill people. This was simply something that they would not even think about. But such a bizarre thing had happened in silence, and continued. The person that they had looked down on the most had caused them huge casualties, and it was an irreparable flaw. Moreover, it was done in a situation where they were completely ignorant and completely silent. And the person that they had been guarding against with all their might did not make a move at all. In fact, he did not even have the intention to make a move at all. He just blindly walked over, and then walked back again. This was equivalent to letting them be slaughtered with their hands tied. This was a great irony. Killing people invisibly was the evil prince's true method. Mei Xuan seemed to be leisurely walking back and forth, but her palms were covered in cold sweat, because Mei Xuan also did not know what Jun Dashao was doing. It had been almost 2 hours, why hadn't Jun Moxie come out yet? There was no movement in the valley either. Whatever arrangements had been made should have been made long ago, right? Was it too difficult? Or was there an accident? Mei Xuan made up her mind, turned around, and walked towards the direction of the valley again. At this moment, suddenly, ah! A weak moan unexpectedly sounded from within the valley. Everyone was startled. All the people present were experts in killing. Which one of them did not kill hundreds or thousands of people? Naturally, they were not unfamiliar with this kind of dying sound. This sound was clearly made by a person who was on the verge of death. He was in extreme pain, but he could not make too much noise. His trachea was completely blocked, and he had to use all his remaining strength to make a sound like the trachea was being ventilated. 200% of the people who made this kind of sound were already dead. They could not be saved. What was going on? What the hell was going on? Xiao Weiqing's face changed, and he suddenly felt a trace of danger. He no longer cared about hiding his body. He slapped the ground, and his body was the first to jump up. On the ground where he was lying just now, a section of the pitch-black tip of a sword appeared, and then retracted, disappearing without a trace. The ground was restored to its original state, but the tip of the sword was incomparably fast. Xiao Weiqing did not see anything strange at all. Even he himself suddenly felt that his heart was very uncomfortable, as if a powerful sword had pierced into it, and his heart meridians were already damaged. If he had seen it, he would have definitely discovered that the position where the black tip of the sword came out was exactly where his left chest was on the ground, life and death in an instant. The minute of the netherworld. Mei Xuyan's pretty face was filled with anger. She laughed coldly and looked at Xiao Weiqing, who was still in midair. She said lightly, "So it's you. Xiao Weiqing of the Great Golden City, you have been lying in ambush for a long time, right? The 3 Holy Lands really can't wait to kill me." Xiao Weiqing wanted to open his mouth to speak, but he felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. Suddenly, he raised his head in midair and spat out a mist of blood. Only then did the pressure on his heart ease, and he floated down to the ground. Xiao Weiqing did not answer Mei Xuyan's words, but he had a sincere feeling that something was wrong. The pain in his heart just now was obviously caused by someone injuring his heart meridians. But, how did this injury happen? Was there anyone else injured? What did that dying cry just now mean? Mei Xueyan did not walk into the gorge. Could it be that there was something fishy about this? Thinking of this, he finally became suspicious. He looked back into the gorge and suddenly shouted, "There's no point in lying in ambush. Everyone, get up and welcome the arrival of Venerable Mei." There was indeed no point in lying in ambush at this time. The others did not know why a 3-stars king-level master like Xiao Weicheng would suddenly soar into the sky and expose himself. They did not even know why he would spit out blood in the sky. Everyone was full of questions. When they heard Xiao Weicheng's call, they came out one after another. The snow rolled, and people in white quietly appeared. They stood in the snow and faced Mei Xueyan. Their eyes were full of murderous intentions. However, Xiao Weicheng's complexion changed. His complexion turned as white as the snow in an instant. Even his lips were slightly trembling. The so-called calm demeanor of a supreme-level master was nowhere to be found. It was because he kept counting. 1, 2, 5, 8, 12, 14, when he reached the 14th person, he did not continue counting. Because no one else had come forward. He knew that he could not have counted incorrectly, but he could not help but count again. It was still 14 people. There were only 14 people. That meant that there were only 15 people including himself. Where were the other 15 people? Where did they go? Xiao Weicheng shouted, "Where are they? Everyone get out here. Show yourselves quickly." When he shouted these words, he felt his whole body turn cold. The weakest of them was a supreme-level master. There was no reason that they could not hear him. If they heard him, they would definitely come out. But why did they not come out? Xiao Weicheng hoped that the others would choose to lie in ambush. Even though he knew that this hope was very slim. Following Xiao Weicheng's thunderous shout, the snow on the mountain peak fell down. The ground also seemed to shake a few times. But still, no one came out. Xiao Weicheng's complexion changed. His originally pale face was now almost ashen. Suddenly, he flew as if he was flying. He slid over 100 feet like lightning. He clapped his hands, and the snow on the ground flew up. It was a mesmerizing sight. Amidst the flying snow, 3 straight bodies were shaken up by this force. Then, they fell down stiffly. Xiao Weicheng felt as if he had been splashed with cold water. His whole body turned cold. Today, I got into a super suspenseful situation. I still have lingering fears. I woke up at noon and was very hungry. So, I put the water caltrops I bought yesterday into the pot. I turned on the natural gas and cooked it. Then, I went to write. Then, I forgot about it. Until I felt a burning smell everywhere. I looked everywhere. I looked in the ashtray, the rubbish bin. I didn't find anything. Then, I remembered, oh my God. The kitchen was on fire. The freshly painted walls were all black. I put out the fire in a hurry. The natural gas valve was broken. I couldn't turn it. The hose was burnt. The pot was melted. Mom scolded me like crazy. Chapter 567. 3 bodies fell onto the snowy ground, causing the snow to fly up. They turned over and revealed their faces. Their eyes were bulging and their faces were twitching, but they were stiff and motionless. 1 superior supreme and 2 supreme martial artists. A total of 3 top-notch experts had actually died silently at some point in time. Such experts were killed without making a single sound. The facial expressions of the 15 experts from the Supreme Golden City changed drastically. Xiao Weicheng's figure did not stop. He flew quickly and arrived at another place. Another 3 corpses were flipped out, and another place. Another 3 cold corpses. 15 corpses were turned over one by one. Xiao Weiqing suddenly stopped moving and stood in the canyon. The 15 corpses were placed around him. Xiao Weiqing's mouth twitched. His face was as mournful as a ghost and he was dumbstruck. Suddenly, Xiao Weiqing roared towards the sky. He roared. No one knew what he was roaring for. It seemed to be an unconscious cry, a scream of pain that pierced into one's heart. That meaningless roar showed the extreme grief and anger of the Supreme Golden City's 3 Pearls King. Who is it? Come out if you are a real man. Xiao Weiqing's hair stood up in anger. Xian Qi was everywhere and the crown that tied his hair suddenly exploded. His grizzled hair danced ferociously in the air. He roared again, which son of a b***tch is it? Using such a despicable and shameless method to sneak an attack. Come out and accept your death. A stream of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The extremely mournful cry shook the heavens and the earth, echoing through the mountains. At this moment, Xiao Weiqing was mad with grief and anger. He no longer cared about the demeanor of an expert. He simply shouted and cursed. However, the surroundings were silent and there was no response. Xiao Weiqing took a deep breath and roared again, son of a b***tch, butcher. Cold-blooded executioner. Come out if you have the guts. What kind of hero are you if you only rely on sneak attacks? Come out for this old man. There was still no sound. Xiao Weiqing's chest was filled with depression. He couldn't help but let out another long howl. His howl was long and mournful. It was endless and the sound shook the sky. The snow on the surrounding mountain peaks trembled and suddenly slid down the mountain peaks. The rumbling sound was like the arrival of doomsday. Under the vibration of his howl, several mountains had avalanches at the same time. The snowy waves rolled down with the power of nature. It was as if it was going to devour the heavens and the earth. The snowy fog rose a few hundred feet into the air, like the waves of the sea, rolling over. The group of experts all dodged, except for Xiao Weiqing, who did not dodge at all, allowing the snow to bury him. Just as the force of the snow lessened, Xiao Weiqing, who was at the bottom of the snow, let out a mournful cry. Once again, he broke out of the snow and shot into mid-air, screaming mournfully. The corpses of the 15 experts were completely buried under the snow of the mountains. Mei Xuyan's eyes were also twitching. She really didn't expect that Jun Moxie's arrangement would actually achieve such a glorious result. It was really too shocking. Mei Xuyan believed that Jun Moxie would be able to assassinate her over a long period of time with his current strength and ability to appear and disappear mysteriously. But in a short period of 2 hours, he killed 10 Supreme Masters and 5 Superior Supreme Masters. And he didn't even make a sound. This was a miracle. Outside the valley, on the way, Jun Moxie ran over, panting. He carefully avoided the snowy waves and shouted, "Wife, wife. Are you okay, wife? I was scared to death. I suddenly heard someone shouting and causing an avalanche. I was halfway through relieving myself. I was so scared that I almost pooped my pants." Mei Xuyan was angry, amused and shocked at the same time. She scolded, "Shut up. Don't you find it embarrassing?" When Xiao Weiqing's body landed, he landed 8 feet away from Mei Xuyan. One was still inside the valley, and the other was outside the valley. He stood solemnly. His face was gloomy and terrifying. His eyes were like a pack of bloodthirsty wolves, flashing a faint green light. He fiercely looked at Mei Xuyan and clenched his teeth. He was extremely resentful as he said word by word, "Venerable Mei, good move. You are really, really vicious." Vicious? Mei Xuyan frowned. What vicious move? Did I do anything? Could it be that this scene in front of us is not your doing, Venerable Mei? Xiao Weiqing suddenly roared with blood in his eyes. 15 of my brothers who have been with me for 100 years were assassinated without a sound. Venerable Mei. Aren't you too cruel? You're so despicable and vicious. You call yourself the Lord of Tianfa? You did it, but you don't have the guts to admit it. Isn't that beneath your status? Mei Shuyan snorted coldly and said, Xiao Weicheng, you call yourself the Three Pearls Throne of the Great Golden City. It was really a joke to say such words. I said I didn't do anything, so I didn't do anything. You still have the face to question me. I want to ask you, if the 30 of you are not here to deal with me, then what are you trying to do? Xiao Weicheng snorted heavily and stared at Mei Shuyan without saying anything. You can't hide it from me. You arranged such a vicious trap to deal with me. Is that what you should do? A few of your men died, and you scold me for being despicable and vicious? Xiao Weicheng. You have the face to say that. I really wonder if you don't have a brain, or if your brain has mold growing in it. Mei Shuyan looked at him disdainfully and said, other than yourself, I really can't think of anyone else to use words like despicable and shameless. I don't want to quarrel with you. Who did it? Hurry up and ask him to come out. Xiao Weicheng said fiercely, I want him to pay with his blood. Xiao Weicheng. Senior, I understand now. Your logic is that only you can kill others, so it's reasonable for you to arrange a vicious trap. If others counterattack against your trap, then it's despicable and shameless? Is that what you mean? Jun Moxie curled his lips and looked at Xiao Weicheng with contempt. Of course. Xiao Weicheng raised his head and shouted, everything that the Great Golden City does is for the common people of the world. Making an enemy out of us is the same as being deranged. Unforgivable. All of our methods are just and honorable. Fighting back against us is treason and heresy. That means standing on the opposite side of humanity. That's a dead end. Ha ha ha. That's funny. Jun Moxie laughed and said, so killing your allies without reason and plotting against others is also fair and just? For the world, for the common people. Is there any method that cannot be used? No matter how despicable the method is, as long as it's for the good purpose, then there's a clear conscience. Xiao Weicheng snorted heavily. You're using it as a reason. You're really shameless. Does the Great Golden City still have any shame? No, your Great Golden City must have stuck half of its face on the other half. Half of you are shameless, and the other half is shameless. Jun Mo Xia cursed and spat out a mouthful of saliva. Xiao Weicheng suddenly turned around and looked at Jun Moxie fiercely. He pointed his finger and said coldly, Jun Moxie, don't think that you can be lawless just because you have a master as your master. If you provoke me, I'll grind your bones and scatter your ashes. You must know that there are some things that you can't say and some things that you're not qualified to do. Now, shut your stinky mouth for this old man. Jun Moxie snorted, rolled his eyes and said, what if I don't want to? Xiao Weicheng took a deep breath and suddenly turned around to look at Mei Shuyan, Venerable Mei, you're also a master of your generation. Today, I won't deny that I did it to ambush you. But now, it's impossible. I'll only ask you one question. Who was the one who did it this time? Among the people who died today, there's no lack of participants in the war for seizing the heavens. Don't tell me you don't know what this means. He looked at Mei Shuyan with a fiery gaze. It was as if fire was about to shoot out of his eyes. Mei Shuyan snorted coldly and said, I've already said that I didn't do anything. Naturally, I don't know anything. How would I know who the culprit is? Don't tell me that I'm responsible for every person who dies in this world. What a big joke. Xiao Weicheng, if you want to start a war, then hurry up. If you don't, then scram with your tail between your legs. Participate in the war for seizing the heavens? This venerable is also participating in the war for seizing the heavens. Why do you want to deal with me? Xiao Weicheng stared at Mei Shuyan. He didn't pay attention to her words. Suddenly, he roared like a bolt from the blue, is it Chu Chihuan? Chu Chihuan? Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan looked at each other in astonishment. What kind of logic is this? Why is this matter related to that Chu Chihuan? Jun Dashao was especially unhappy. Motherfucker, you idiots. In this world, besides Chu Chihuan, is there no one else who can kill people? Why are you thinking about that? Can't you think about it? It's me, evil monarch Jun Moxie, who did it. But as soon as Xiao Weiqing said this, the other 14 people from the Supreme Golden City showed a look of agreement. Yes, in this world, if there was someone who could assassinate so many experts without a trace, then there was no other person besides Chu Chihuan. Even the masters of the 3 holy lands could only fight these experts head-on. Killing people without a trace like this was impossible. This was purely in the field of expertise. Although everyone thought that even Chu Chihuan might not be able to do this, in fact, there were many flaws. But in this world, besides this supreme assassin, there was no one else who could do this. Coming and going without a trace, killing people without a trace, this was the supreme assassin Chu Chihuan's signature move. Chapter 568. Jun Moxie couldn't help but laugh and said, I say, what does this have to do with Chu Chihuan? Do you 3 holy lands always accuse innocent people without any reason? I don't even know the king of assassins. I haven't even seen him. What kind of reasoning is this? You're making this up. Jun Moxie laughed wickedly as he said this. Chu Chihuan is a good person. Ha ha ha. This is a big joke. Xiao Weiqing looked up to the sky and laughed. His face was full of grief and indignation, and his expression was ferocious. He said, he's a cold-blooded butcher. His body is full of sin. His hands are stained with blood. He only recognizes money and doesn't recognize people. If he was given money, he would even dare to kill his own father. How can you say that he's a good person? Jun Moxie, do you have any sense of justice in your heart? Do you have any sense of justice? Did I wrongly accuse him? Jun Moxie, this sentence of yours is a blatant attempt to hide something. If you didn't collude with him, would you have exonerated him? Xiao Weiqing said angrily, it must be Chu Chihuan. From today onwards, the Great Golden City and Chu Chihuan are irreconcilable enemies. Jun Moxie and Mei Xuan looked at each other. They didn't expect that there would be such an unreasonable person in this world. He had dragged the supreme assassin into this. What the hell is this? If the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan, were to hear this, he would spit out a mouthful of blood. How can I bear all the crimes? Is there any justice in this world? I shouldn't be called the supreme assassin. I should be called the supreme black walk. Jun Moxie still remembered that when he was following the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei used to think that he was the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan. Could it be that the movements of this world's apex king assassin were actually so similar to his own? He just didn't know who was more brilliant and who was the real king of assassins. Mei Xuan sneered, Xiao Weiqing, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for your great golden city. A person with such shallow knowledge and experience is making a rash judgment. What a joke in Jianghu. Xiao Weiqing sneered. His face was filled with hatred. He looked around and roared, Chu Chihuan. Since you have the guts to kill people, why don't you have the guts to come out and see this old man? There was still no movement. Jun Moxie laughed with infinite mockery. Mei Xuan snorted coldly and walked forward. Now, the Supreme Golden City only had 5 superior Supreme Masters and 10 Supreme Masters left. Mei Xuan didn't care about this kind of power anymore. Even if she couldn't kill them all, she could at least retreat safely. Moreover, she had Jun Moxie to help her, so she was even more fearless. So, Mei Xuan just barged in. The 2 Supreme Golden City's experts blocked the road with red eyes and shouted, the matter is not clear yet, Venerable Mei, please stay for a moment. Mei Xuan Lengleng shouted, the matter is not clear yet. Why don't I think so? Get lost. The 2 experts were furious. Suddenly, their swords flew out like lightning. The shadows of the swords were like the billowing clouds and the angry sea. Suddenly, they flew into the sky and two round swords, one on the left and one on the right, flew towards Mei Shuyan. They were already aroused by the death of their comrade. When they heard Mei Shuyan's impolite scolding, they didn't stop there. They didn't even greet each other and directly used the pinnacle of swordsmanship, body and sword as one. They rushed towards her. Mei Shuyan turned her wrist and a long sword appeared in her hand. She shouted coldly and the light from the sword spread out. The entire sky was suddenly filled with countless fiery trees and silver flowers. The light from the sword was like cold lightning, and it shot out in all directions without any hesitation. These two people didn't know what was good for them, so Mei Shuyan wouldn't show any mercy. Since you guys have body and sword as one, then I will cut you in half. Once the sword was raised, not only did it kill, but it also cut them in half. Xiao Weiqing shouted, "Stop!" After seeing the 15 corpses, Xiao Weiqing had completely given up on the idea of ambushing Mei Shuyan. He knew that with his current strength, ambushing Mei Shuyan would only result in death. Even if the remaining 15 people were all killed, the most they could do was to seriously injure Mei Shuyan. And that was the most conservative estimate. Right now, Xiao Weiqing only wanted to capture the murderer who killed his brother, Chu Qihuan. As for dealing with Mei Shuyan, he would leave it to hermitage and illusory blood sea. Therefore, he had no intention of intercepting them. When he saw the two supreme martial artists attacking Mei Shuyan recklessly, he couldn't help but be shocked and hurriedly shouted for them to stop. But it was all too late. After being enlightened by Jun Dashao, Mei Shuyan understood the righteous way of a gentleman, so she couldn't tolerate it anymore. With a long whistle, the sharp light from the sword shot out. Suddenly, two cries of pain could be heard. Clang, clang, clang. 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 Blood rained down from the sky, and the two long swords were broken into pieces. The two supreme martial artists, upon contact, were cut into countless pieces, dead. Mei Shuyan floated down. Her white robe was spotless, and there was not a single trace of blood on it. Her face was even colder, and her murderous aura suddenly surged, enveloping the entire area. Xiao Weiqing was about to speak, hoping to ease the conflict. After all, it was too disadvantageous for the Great Golden City to attack at this moment. The advantage of the ambush had been completely destroyed, and their strength had been reduced by more than half. After such a huge change, the morale of their men had been taken away, and they no longer had the will to fight. On the other hand, Venerable Mei had easily taken the lives of two supreme martial artists, and his murderous aura was at its peak. Moreover, there was a super killer, the supreme killer Chu Qihuan, who could launch a sneak attack at any time. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for the Great Golden City. Without waiting for Xiao Weiqing to speak, Mei Shuyan had already turned her head, and stared at him with her cold but unusually clear eyes. A deep and grand pressure rose like a hurricane, and shrouded all the 13 people from the Great Golden City. This was a majestic aura that only a king could have, and it was a bitingly cold aura that held the power of life and death. It was an unparalleled domineering aura that looked down on all living beings. At this moment, as the peerless demeanor of the number one person in Tianfa, Mei Shuyan's real strength was fully displayed. Under such a grand and majestic aura, the words that Xiao Weiqing was about to say were blocked in his throat. He could only feel that the cold and awe-inspiring gaze had shone into the depths of his heart, and had firmly locked onto his soul. For a moment, Xiao Weiqing felt as if his whole body had fallen into an ice cave, and he had actually forgotten his original intention. In front of him were the bloody corpses of his two subordinates, but at this moment, Xiao Weiqing had actually forgotten about his desire for revenge. There were still his 12 subordinates behind him to help him. But at this moment, Xiao Weiqing had also forgotten to summon them to help him fight. He only knew that Mei Shuyan, who was in front of him, seemed to be able to bury him forever in this snowy land with just a raise of her hand or a stomp of her foot. Mei Shuyan looked at him coldly, and said lightly, Xiao Weicheng, you'd better not speak anymore. If you dare to say another word, I will kill all 13 of you here, and bury you here forever. Do you want to bet on whether or not I dare to do it, and whether or not I can? Mei Shuyan's voice was very soft, and her tone was even calmer, as if she was merely stating a fact of the past. But the meaning behind his words was enough to make one tremble with fear. Dare to do it, and whether or not I can. How domineering was this? Under such a shocking and boundless aura, even the wind and snow in the sky seemed to have stopped in the void. Of course, although Mei Shuyan's strength was shocking, it was not enough to change the natural changes between heaven and earth. The earth was just an illusion, and even though the wind and snow did not stop, everyone's heart could no longer feel it. The only thing that could be felt was Mei Shuyan's domineering aura. Deep like the sea, majestic like the mountains. Cold sweat broke out on Xiao Weicheng's forehead. He tried his best to gather all his spiritual consciousness and Xian Qi to fight against Mei Shuyan's horrifying aura. He tried his best to free himself from the whirlpool of her aura, but he could not do it. Mei Shuyan looked at him for a while, and laughed mockingly. She then turned to Jun Moxie and said, "Let's go." Jun Mo Xia laughed heartily and walked over in a relaxed and happy manner. The two of them walked side by side into the canyon. Their pace was neither fast nor slow. It was so casual and natural. There were a total of 13 peak experts behind them. Any one of them would be able to catch up with them in a single leap. However, not a single one of them made a move. Looking at the silhouettes of the man and the woman in front of them, everyone's expression became extremely complicated. Was the difference in their strength that huge? How could it be? Back then, when 10 superior supreme experts ganged up on Mei Shuyan, she was merciful and did not kill them. Under the situation where she was beaten up on all sides, she still managed to escape. Now, Mei Shuyan was not as merciful as she was back then. She did not show any mercy at all. Every time she attacked, she would use her killer move. But what was sad was that there were only 5 superior supreme experts and 10 superior supreme experts left on her side. With this kind of strength, coupled with the fact that they were in a disadvantageous position, it was simply impossible for them to kill Mei Shuyan. It was more likely that they would be annihilated by the opponent. When a gentleman could no longer be deceived, the person who tried to devise a plan would definitely have a bleak ending. Especially when this gentleman's strength was extraordinary. The facts had proven this inference. The silhouettes of Mei Shuyan and Jun Moxie finally disappeared on the other side of the gorge. The snow in the sky seemed to be playing along, and it started to fall heavily. The wind blew on Xiao Weicheng's face, and it was very cold. But no matter how cold it was, it could not be compared to the coldness in his heart. "Everyone, let's go." Xiao Weicheng let out a long sigh. This super strong person who was above the Supreme Master level lowered his head sadly and silently moved his feet. In an instant, this 3 pearls throne of the Supreme Golden City seemed to have suddenly aged a few decades. Even his once straight back seemed to be a little hunched. Chapter 569. Xiao Weicheng heaved a long sigh. He looked at the corpses on the snowy ground in a daze. He closed his eyes and said sadly, "This place is remote. It's not convenient to move them. For the time being, let's bury them here. This day will come sooner or later. But king-level master, we can't let go of Mei Shuyan and Chu Chihuan like this." The gray-bearded old man fiercely gritted his teeth. Tears slowly flowed down from his eyes and streaked across his face. He was so angry that he choked with sobs and said, "King-level leader Xiao, the bones of my old brothers are still warm, corpses are not cold yet?" Xiao Weicheng looked at him mockingly. How can corpses not be cold in such weather? So what if their corpses are not cold yet? Do you remember to say this now? Why didn't you say this when Venerable Mei was here? If you are so hot-blooded, why didn't you rush to avenge your brothers? Look at how leisurely those 2 people are walking, they probably haven't gone far. If you want to avenge your dead brother, you can chase after them. I can make the decision to fulfill your desire to avenge your friend. Do you dare to do it? The white-bearded old man's face turned red. He was embarrassed and angry. His eyes widened in horror. King-level Master Shao. What do you mean? Were you very awe-inspiring just now? Do you think I am the only one who can avenge my brothers? Do you think I dare to do it? If I am alone, even if I catch up with them, I am not strong enough. What's the point? You know you are not strong enough. Then why are you asking me? I am doing this for the Supreme Golden City. Do you think I can care about your feelings at this moment? Bastard! Xiao Weiqing was furious. You know the consequences of what happened just now. I know it. How could those who were lucky enough to survive not know? I didn't bring all of you out of Gold City to bury all of you here. You are asking me why I didn't deal with Mei Xuan? Don't you understand? Why are you shouting at me now? The people from Hermitage and Illusory Blood Sea were waiting behind them. And we've already lost 17 people without even knowing why. 17 top experts. If we continue to fight here, what will the consequences be? Have you lost your mind? Are we going to allow Gold City to suffer losses while the other two holy lands reap the benefits and suppress us from then on? You only know how to yell. Can't you consider the bigger picture? He suddenly squatted on the ground and covered his face with his hands. Murky old tears slowly flowed down his face. For the death of his brother, and for his cowardice just now, send out the Golden City order the whole world to hunt down the supreme killer Chu Chihuan. Xiao Weiqing took a deep breath. The veins on his forehead were twitching. He was trying his best to control his emotions. But the more he tried to control it, the more his voice trembled. Kill him at all costs. If Chu Chihuan knew the whole story, he would probably spit out a mouthful of blood in grief and indignation. He wouldn't even need the Supreme Golden City to hunt him down. He would just kill himself, yes. Everyone agreed after a moment of silence. Heavy snow swirled in the air. In this spacious valley, there were now 17 more uninhabited graves, silently standing behind a mountain rock. Xiao Weiqing and the rest of them paid their respects with tears streaming down their faces. They were trembling and gritting their teeth in grief and indignation. But more than that, they didn't know what to do. They left dejectedly, but they kept looking back. The snow had covered their footprints, and the world was once again a vast expanse. The falling snowflakes gradually covered the tombstones that had no tombstones. The wind suddenly blew, and the ground was once again a flat snowfield. There were no more bloodstains. As if nothing had happened, the disciples of the pugilistic world died under the saber, and the heroes of the pugilistic world died under the sword. They used to be strong, they used to have glory, they used to dominate the world, and they used to rule the pugilistic world. Now, they only returned to a pile of yellow soil, and they could only leave an approximate position. They couldn't write their names. Because, they had too many enemies. Someone would definitely come to dig their graves to vent their hatred. Over the past 10,000 years, who could be an exception to such an ending? Shui Yan, you were too impressive just now. When can I be as impressive as you? That would be great. Jun Moxie laughed. He pushed the sleigh and caught up with Mei Xuan. He said, just a simple stand and 13 people. A whole 13 top experts. All of them were so scared by you that they didn't dare to move. So cool. Ha ha ha. One of the 3 holy lands, the Great Golden City, was actually scared out of their wits. So funny. You have underestimated the people from the Great Golden City. They were not scared out of their wits. They only did this to divert the trouble. Mei Xuan smiled faintly. Since ancient times, the 3 holy lands have always kept each other in check. Their strength was almost the same. The Great Golden City lost so many experts in this accident. How could they be willing to do it? Actually, with their remaining strength, they are still able to fight with me. Even if they all lose their lives here, I will definitely have to pay the price of serious injuries. However, in this way, it will only benefit the other two factions. How could they be willing to sacrifice themselves for others? They were not willing to be the only one to suffer losses. They wanted to keep us alive to harm the Hermitage and the illusory ocean of blood. So they would not make a move. They would rather swallow their anger. This was the killing intent of an assassination. The killing intent of the evil monarch. But it was not the killing intent of Jun Moxie. As he thought about it, Jun Moxie let out a long sigh. The current you, no one can see through you. No matter if it is an outsider, your family, or friends, no one is an exception. Mei Xueyan stood beside him quietly for a while. Suddenly, she smiled and said, "Sometimes, you are like a rascal, like a hooligan. But sometimes, you are like a cold warrior. Sometimes, you are like a poet. I still don't understand. How did you come to have so many contradictory personalities? And how did you switch back and forth so easily? If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have had a mental breakdown." Jun Moxie smiled deeply and looked into the distance. He said lightly, "It's nothing much. It is just me adjusting myself. It is really not a big deal. I am such a person. I have no choice but to do this." Some time ago, when the Jun family was on the verge of collapse, I did not dare to reveal my true strength. I could only play with my life. After a while, when the Jun family stabilized, my hands were stained with blood. Jun Mo Xia smiled faintly and said, "After a person has gone through a massacre, there will always be something else on their body. Or rather, there will be an invisible and strange feeling. I call this feeling, killing intent. The more people they kill, the stronger this feeling will be. Especially when they meet strangers. It will make them feel frightened. This is too easy to expose. It is also not good for family and friends. Naturally, I need to use some methods to hide it." Chapter 570. Secondly, it is to disperse the murderous aura on your body. With this kind of murderous aura, if you want to assassinate others, it is simply courting death. Experts can sense this kind of murderous aura. So, a successful assassin will always look more ordinary than an ordinary person. Those who have a murderous look on their faces are mostly small characters that are not worth mentioning. My way of releasing pressure and adjusting my murderous aura is different from other assassins. I do it according to my own temperament, whether it is frivolous or frivolous. In short, as long as I can release it, then it is a successful balance. There is no specific method. A specific method of releasing pressure is also a flaw for an assassin, a fatal flaw. So, an assassin who can be seen as an assassin with one look is no different from an idiot. And those who think that an assassin should have a cold face and a rigid look are a bunch of idiots. Furthermore, he's a brainless idiot. Jun Moxie smiled, "But I believe that when I don't kill, no one will recognize me as an assassin, and a super assassin at that. In this aspect, I think I am successful. And this foundation is that I am usually relaxed, frivolous, and frivolous. Do you understand now?" "I don't understand, and I don't understand even more." Mei Xueyan frowned. "The murderous aura and the principles of an assassin, I can understand them all, but the only thing I don't understand is, how can you be an assassin? And a super assassin? Why do you always put yourself in the perspective of an assassin? You are obviously a young master of an aristocratic family, and you are only 18 years old this year. Everyone has seen your past, how can you relate to being an assassin?" Jun Mo Xia was left speechless for a while. I had been so happy a moment ago that I had actually neglected this point. How could he explain this? "I have killed people. Isn't that an assassin?" Jun Moxie argued irrationally, and then immediately changed the topic. "Xueyan, in your opinion, should we rush at full speed? Or should he take his time? If we rush at full speed, we should be able to surpass Xiao Weicheng and the others. If we slow down, I'm afraid they will overtake us. At that time, how should we deal with it? Mei Xueyan rolled her eyes at him. She knew that he was trying to change the topic, but she did not expose him. She simply said, "This time, the great golden city has suffered a great loss. According to the situation where they are fighting openly and secretly, they should not inform the next group of people about the real situation. They might even mislead them. Isn't that even better? Isn't that our chance?" June Moxie smiled thoughtfully. Opportunity? What opportunity? Mei Xueyan was smart. She immediately understood June Dashao's meaning and said, "You mean, pretending to be injured?" "Yeah, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger is the true way of the king," June Moxie said in a serious tone. Dealing a fatal blow to the enemy while they are still in a state of surprise is a great achievement. "Ha, you humans are too cunning." Mei Xueyan laughed. This was another mountain pass. Although it was not very steep, it was the only way. This was undoubtedly another perfect place for an ambush. At this moment, the leader of Hermitage, Ning Wuqing, was standing at the entrance of the valley. His white robe was the same color as the snowfield. His long beard fluttered in the wind. He looked like he was going to ride the wind. His face was full of righteousness and he looked like an immortal. Behind him, 28 top experts were divided into 2 rows, sitting quietly behind the mountain rocks. They did not hide their tracks. They only used the mountain rocks to cover their bodies. It was impossible to hide from the divine senses of the experts. It was as if they were hiding from the wind. When he thought of Xiao Weiqing who had just walked past this place, Ning Wuqing wanted to laugh at his misfortune. There were 30 people from Great Golden City, 30 top experts. After the battle, there were only 13 left. Moreover, the leader, Xiao Weiqing, seemed to be seriously injured. Although he tried his best to hide it, Ning Wuqing could see from his pale face that the battle was tragic. The more miserable the better. This was really satisfying. Let's see how you are going to show off. When you are miserable, we can take advantage of you. Ning Wuqing said that he was concerned, but in fact, he was asking about the battle. Xiao Weiqing said angrily, "You will understand when you see Venerable Mei. I wish you success in this battle." Then, he led his people and left in a hurry. Ning Wuqing felt great in his heart. Do I have to see Venerable Mei to understand? Now, it is very clear. You've lost more than half of your men. Even if Venerable Mei's skills are exceedingly high, it's impossible for her to achieve such a result without suffering any injuries. Moreover, the injuries will be very serious. 5 Supreme-level experts were sacrificed, and 10 Supreme-level experts were killed. Even the 3 stars King-level expert, Xiao Weiqing, was seriously injured. If such a huge price was not paid in exchange for Mei Xueyan's serious injuries, there would be no justice and it would be the biggest joke in the world. Back then, the 10 of us almost killed her. Not to mention now. We have rested and built up our strength. Venerable Mei is seriously injured, weak and exhausted. Therefore, after Ning Wuqing surveyed the terrain, he felt that there was no point in setting up an ambush. Moreover, it would be a loss of Hermitage's magnanimous demeanor. This place isn't small. So, there are plenty of opportunities to dodge and move around. We only need to set up an ambush until Venerable Mei arrives. I presume that she is seriously injured. Ha ha ha. Won't such a peerless skill fall into my hands? No wonder Xiao Weiqing looked at me in such a strange way before he left. So, it was jealousy. Therefore, Ning Wuqing was very relieved. After all, there was no longer anything to worry about. I can successfully kill Venerable Mei under my command, then, it won't matter if half-bodied dies or doesn't die. In fact, it will be one less target for me to fight for, the heavens are helping me. 2 figures slowly approached from afar. Mei Xueyan and June Moxie were getting closer and closer. Ning Wuqing waved his hand, and everyone concealed themselves. Then, Ning Wuqing stood firmly behind a rock. Lenglang looked at the two people who had just arrived. She carefully observed them, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile. June Moxie hadn't been injured. This was obvious. After all, how could a great master like June Moxie, who was so weak, enter his eyes? However, he had a good master. So, no one would dare to touch a single hair on his head. Mei Xueyan seemed normal at first glance. She didn't have the slightest injury on her body. Even her clothes were as white as snow. Her complexion was rosy. However, June Moxie was looking at her from time to time with a concerned look on his face. It seemed as if he was very worried. In fact, it could be seen that June Moxie was deliberately slowing down his pace. This is reasonable. With Mei Xueyan's status, she wouldn't lose her composure no matter how heavily injured she was. This is the pride of a great master, and it can't be changed. If Mei Xueyan had come with her clothes in tatters, her face pale, and her body full of injuries, Ning Wuqing would have suspected that her injuries were fake. Ning Wuqing would only believe that under such calmness, his own sharp eyes could find a flaw in it. This woman who has been awe-inspiring for a lifetime is really injured at this moment. If she wasn't injured, if she didn't suffer any serious injuries, with Mei Xueyan's strength, June Moxie wouldn't have been worried about her. Ning Wuqing's heart is finally at ease. The two of them had arrived at the mountain pass. Venerable Mei, we meet again. It's been a while. How are you? Ning Wuqing laughed out loud. His white robe fluttered in the wind as he stood on top of the mountain rock. His sharp eyes were smiling as he looked at the man and woman who were a few feet away from him. It was as if everything was under his control. June Moxie and Mei Xueyan suddenly stopped. Mei Xueyan looked at Ning Wuqing and smiled. Ning Wuqing. You're really like a ghost that won't go away. Do you really think that I can't bear to kill you forever? The war for seizing the heavens is indeed a protective talisman. But this talisman also has its limits. Venerable Mei's Xian skills are unparalleled, and his heart is vicious. I don't have any friendship with Venerable Mei. Venerable Mei will naturally be willing to kill me. I don't think I'll get lucky. Ning Wuqing chuckled. He looked at June Moxie, who had a worried look on his face. He shook his head and said, but if Venerable Mei is so confident, why is your little lover so uneasy? Could it be? Venerable Mei, you're injured. Then, he said, it's no wonder. The Supreme Golden City lost 17 experts in one go. I guess Venerable Mei is not having it easy, right? But, you can actually kill 17 top experts in one go. This kind of peerless skill is really admirable. I can't catch up to you. June Moxie's face was full of worry and anger. He stepped forward and looked impulsive. He gritted his teeth and pointed at Ning Wuqing and shouted, the Supreme Golden City is despicable and shameless. They actually hid in the snowfield and plotted against Xueyan. Unfortunately, they've harmed themselves in the end. Karma is not good. They finally returned in defeat. Ning Wuqing, don't tell me that you, with the name of hermitage and the prestige of a superior supreme, want to take advantage of others when they're in danger. Young Master June, you don't know. I didn't take advantage of others when they're in danger. Ning Wuqing said warmly, I'm just taking advantage of beasts when they're in danger. He looked at June Moxie with some pity in his eyes. Then, he said in a soft voice, young Master June, you mustn't forget that this stunning beauty in front of you is a wild beast. Young Master June is a famous teacher and your future is limitless. But, you're so captivated by beauty. It really makes me sigh. June Moxie was so anxious that his face turned red. He stepped in front of Mei Xueyan and opened his arms. He said angrily, no matter what you say, no means no. If you have the guts, kill me first. Chapter 571. Fourth update. Mei Shuiyan looked around and smiled faintly. It's still those people. Ning Wuqing, you haven't asked for help. You think you can stop this venerable with just these people? Isn't that a little too whimsical? Ning Wuqing replied in a calm manner, these people might not be enough in normal times. But, they should be enough now. Venerable Mei, I'm sure you won't deny what I said. He turned his head and looked at Jun Moxie. Then, he spoke in a gentle manner, young Master Jun, this old man was in your good graces that day at the aristocratic hall. So, I owe you a big favor. So, I took a bone-tempering pill first. And, your master also gave us a way out in the Jun family. He didn't attack us. I will always remember this friendship. And, we, the Hermitage, have never wanted to become enemies with your master. So, I have a few words from the bottom of my heart. I wonder if the young Master Jun is interested in listening to them. What words? Jun Moxie looked at him vigilantly. Then, he said nervously, speak. He looked like an extremely nervous young man. He wanted to protect his lover at all costs. In fact, he looked so real that even Mei Shuiyan almost burst out laughing. This guy is a genius. He can act like a dragon and act like a tiger. He's really good. The young master is handsome and elegant. Your family background is rich. Your Tianxiang's noble title is hereditary. Your status in the Jianghu is that of a super family. There's no need to doubt this. Your future prospects are boundless. You will become a dragon among men once your wings are fully grown. You will soar to the sky. Ning Wuqing spoke in a tone of deep regret. Then, he continued in a sincere manner, if the young master wishes to find a good wife, there are many beauties in this world. They can come and go as you wish. But, why would the young master waste his youth for a Xian beast that isn't of our race? You should know that humans and beasts walk different paths, and in the end, there won't be a good ending. Don't look at this woman's fairy-like appearance, but in the end, she's still a profound beast. What do you mean? Jun Moxie was puzzled. Can't I marry her? Is it a sin for me to marry her? It's not just a sin, young Master Jun has let down the Jun family's ancestors. Ning Wuqing said earnestly, young Master Jun, for the past 10,000 years, there have been many Xian beasts who have taken human form. But has young Master ever heard of any Xian beast marrying a human? That's true. However, just because they didn't exist in the past didn't mean that they didn't exist now, and it didn't mean that they wouldn't exist in the future. In this world, there are only things that you can't think of, but there is nothing that you can't do. Man can conquer nature. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows, let me be the first in history, what's wrong with that? This isn't a question of whether it's possible or not, it's a question of one's own bloodline. Ning Wuqing said solemnly, you should know that when humans become husband and wife, they will naturally give birth to children. When Xian beasts form a pair, they will also give birth to little Xian beasts. This is the law of heaven and earth, and cannot be changed. But when humans and Xian beasts become husband and wife, will they give birth to children? Or will they give birth to a Xian beast? It's true that Venerable Mei has already transformed into a human, and is even more charming and enchanting. I believe that there are very few people in this world who can resist her seductive charm. But young Master Jun must not forget that even if she were to cultivate for another 30,000 years, she would still be a wild beast in her bones, and absolutely not a human. The offspring she gives birth to can only be Xian beasts, and not normal babies. Such a demoness, why not get rid of her as soon as possible? What's the point of keeping her around? Mei Shuiyan's expression changed drastically. Her face turned paler than the snow. Her delicate body also started to tremble slightly. Ning Wuqing's original intention of saying those words was to separate the two of them, and to further attack Mei Shuiyan. But he did not realize that his words, whether intentionally or unintentionally, had touched upon the thing that Mei Shuiyan was most worried about, the thing that she was most afraid of. Even though she knew that his intention was to sow discord, to separate the two of them, and to attack Mei Shuyan, but Mei Shuyan was still shocked. Ning Wuqing himself had suffered from a broken heart in love, and had been alone his entire life. But he deeply understood the word love, and it was a very harmful thing. Mei Shuyan had trained hard for hundreds of years, and had never had the slightest thought of love. It could be said that her heart was as calm as still water. But the more a person was like that, once they fell in love, there was no cure. As the saying goes, when an old house is on fire, there is no cure. If Ning Wuqing could persuade Jun Moxie to leave Mei Shuyan, then whether Mei Shuyan was injured or not, she would inevitably lose her rationality, and lose her mind. Her fighting strength would also drop, and she might even die without a fight. Not to mention that she was seriously injured. Ning Wuqing Lenglang looked at the change in Mei Shuyan's expression, and was overjoyed. He knew that he had touched her sore spot. Do you have anything else to say? Jun Moxie's expression calmed down, and he looked coldly at Ning Wuqing, his hands behind his back, and his voice became emotionless. As the saying goes, honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. I know that young Master Jun doesn't like to hear it, but I have no choice but to say it. Young Master Jun, you must consider it carefully. You must know that the Jun family has a good reputation, and is considered a heroic family in Tianxiang. If people were to find out that their only descendant married a Xian beast as a wife, it would inevitably become a big joke. Or, what's even more frightening is that after a year and a half, if the Jun family succeeds in giving birth to a child, then that's fine. But if they give birth to a little fox or a little tiger, then the Jun family's reputation will be greatly damaged, and they will be disgraced. Young Master Jun, how will you face the Jun family's ancestors if that happens? Ning Wuqing looked at Jun Moxie with a pained expression, and it seemed as if he could already see the embarrassing situation that the Jun family would face. He sighed and said, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Young Master Jun, you must think thrice before you act. If you insist on doing things your own way, and you end up becoming a huge joke. Young Master Jun, it is not that this Ning's words are too harsh, but this Ning is wholeheartedly thinking for young Master's sake. Let me ask you, if young Master were to take this Xian beast as your wife, what is the difference between that and your own dogs and cats? You mean? I need the approval of the 3 holy lands to marry whoever I want. Jun Moxie looked at Ning Wuqing in a cynical manner. Ning Wuqing, have you gone senile? Ning Wuqing didn't get angry. Instead, he sighed bitterly and said, again, honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. I'm thinking for the young master, I'm thinking for the Jun family's future. This old man's sincerity can be witnessed by the heavens and the earth. The young master may not understand it now, and may even be extremely disgusted by it. But, you'll certainly understand this old man's painstaking efforts in the future. Mei Shuyan's body started to tremble. She looked at Jun Moxie with a pair of distressed eyes. Her eyes had already become somewhat hazy. Ning Wuqing's words had undoubtedly dealt a fatal blow to Mei Shuyan. She could even feel her heart shattering bit by bit. Her lover was slowly drifting further and further away. From the time Ning Wuqing had spoken these words, his ice-cold expression, and the stiff expression on Jun Moxie's face, Mei Shuyan had felt sincere despair. Bearing children was a wonderful thing in the world. But, if the child was a Xian beast? This was something that no family in the world could accept. This was simply an absurd and bizarre story. How could the Jun family and Jun Moxie be an exception? Before this, he was only infatuated with her appearance, and that warm feeling between the two of them. But, once he understood the future of this matter, it was inevitable that Jun Moxie would make a different choice. If he made the so-called rational choice, then, Mei Shuyan felt her entire body turn cold. She stood there, but it was as if she was the only person in the world. There was no hope, no one to rely on. This is still not my world. I'm still a Xian beast. I'd better return to the Tian Fa forest, this once sweet and tender feeling, no matter how much I hate to part with it, ultimately does not belong to me. Mei Shuiyan's mind was in a daze. Suddenly, her mind went blank, and she lost all her guard. June Moxie suddenly laughed and said, Ning Wuqing, what you said is indeed correct. What you said makes me even more tempted. Mei Shuiyan's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at him in shock. Was he going to make his stance clear just like that? She could only hear Ning Wuqing's gratified voice, young Master June, to be able to turn back from the wrong path, it is truly admirable. June Mo Xia shook his head and said mockingly, your words are extremely sincere, and I believe that it's enough to move many people. It's a pity that you still don't understand this young master's character. He slowly took 2 steps back and gently reached out his hand to embrace Mei Shuiyan's trembling body. He hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, how dare you not believe in your husband? After this matter is over, you will be punished according to the family rules. His words were spoken very quickly, and there was a hint of fierceness in his tone. However, Mei Shuiyan's body suddenly trembled, and her heart was filled with vitality again. Then, she snuggled into the man's warm embrace. She felt that her heart was clear, and her messy thoughts seemed to have been straightened out in an instant. This embrace was still as warm as ever. Tears suddenly flowed down her cheeks, like pearls from a broken necklace. Her heart was still trembling with fear, as if her heart was still trembling with fear and pain. June Moxie gently held Mei Shuiyan's slender waist and turned to look at Ning Wuqing. Lenglang said, you are not the only one who knows about this problem. Do you think I don't? I have been thinking about this problem for a long time. But today, thanks to your straightforwardness, it has enlightened me. It has made me finally make up my mind. June Moxie looked affectionately at Mei Shuiyan in his arms. He then raised his head and said resolutely, I am a vagabond, a wastrel who is rotten to the core. The opinions of the world, to me, are nothing more than dog's fart. What I, June Moxie, value is never people, nor Xian beasts, nor beauty, nor wisdom, nor strength. Chapter 572. Ning Wuqing's face was ashen and his eyes were spitting fire. June Moxie, you are really stubborn. You will regret it one day. A man marrying a beast is the biggest joke in the world and will ruin the great Tang. It seems that the June family's name will become infamous throughout the world in the future. This matter is set in stone. Even if the June family stinks and falls, even if I really give birth to a Xian beast. Ning Wuqing, what does that have to do with you? June Moxie glared at him and said with some bewilderment, Ning Wuqing, you are neither my son nor my grandson. What are you worrying about? Are you even qualified to worry about it? I am really curious. You guys don't do your proper business and instead come to meddle in my family's affairs. Are you so damn bored that your balls hurt? Ning Wuqing's body trembled and he suddenly roared, you are really infuriating this old man. Oh, I know, I understand. Ning Wuqing, is it because your wife is dead and you are single for the rest of your life? Do you want others to be single for the rest of their lives? June Moxie said sharply, but there are still many normal people in this world. Everyone wants to hug their wife to sleep and snuggle into the warm bed. There are definitely not many people like you who refuse to find a wife and go to the brothel to earn money. Ning Wuqing, you still have the face to talk to me about being unfilial and not having a descendant. Even if I give birth to a Xian beast after my marriage with Shuiyan, it will still have the surname June. But what about you? After you die, will there still be someone with the surname Ning? How miserable it will be very difficult to find a Xian beast to bury for you. Ning Wuqing was so angered by June Mo Xia's words that his hands and feet were trembling, his face was ashen, and his eyes seemed to be particularly wild. June Moxie was still holding Mei Shuiyan's waist. He lowered his head and pinched her little nose lovingly. He smiled softly and said, Wife, did I enjoy scolding this old thing? Do you feel like you've vented your anger? If you think it's not enough, I'll continue scolding. This is your husband's forte. Even if I'm not number 1 in the world, I'm still in the top 3. Mei Xuan smiled gently with tears in her eyes. She leaned her little head against his chest and drew circles with her slender fingers. She said softly, "Are you speaking the truth?" June Moxie said seriously, "If there is any lie in my words, may the heavens strike me with lightning. 10,000 swords will pierce through your body, and you will die a horrible death." Before he could finish, his mouth was covered by a small hand that emitted a sweet fragrance. He looked down and saw Mei Xuan's beautiful eyes filled with tears. Her 2 big eyes stared deeply at him through the tears. She said word by word, "I believe you." June Moxie smiled slightly and finally relaxed. He put his forehead against Mei Xuan's smooth forehead and said gently, "If you believe me, then I am really not afraid of anything. God knows how terrible your face was just now and how much pain I felt. If you leave me, I really can't live anymore. Without you, what is the meaning of life?" June Moxie sensitively felt that Ning Wuqing's words had left an indelible shadow in Mei Xuan's heart. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use his own life to dispel Mei Xuan's worries. Although it was a bit mushy, but women were willing to listen to it, Mei Xuan choked and her tears fell like pearls, soaking June Moxie's shirt. She sobbed and said, "I won't leave you." June Moxie felt relieved and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. Mei Xuan's body trembled. She raised her head and looked at June Moxie. She smiled with tears in her eyes. They were surrounded by strong enemies. This pair of children were actually in the midst of strong enemies. They were deeply in love with each other, as if there was no one else around. Ning Wuqing finally regained his breath and roared, "What a pair of shameless and ungrateful bastards! Everyone, let's get rid of this pair of evildoers." June Moxie hugged Mei Xuan and whispered into her ear, "Wifey, how are you now? If you haven't completely calmed down, you can watch from the side. Watch how your husband fights these clowns. Don't force yourself." Mei Xuan looked at him with a smile and said, "I'm not that weak. As long as you don't change, how can I be defeated by others? If you fight alone, I can't be at ease." When she said the last sentence, she couldn't help but lower her head shyly. June Moxie laughed out loud. He heard the whistling sound behind him and the sound of blades cutting through the air. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. 2 white figures turned around at the same time. 2 dazzling lights suddenly lit up. Mei Xuan's sword of the king and June Moxie's blood of yellow flame were unsheathed at the same time. Dense sword chi soared into the sky. Ding ding ding. After a series of crisp sounds, the sword light dimmed and brightened again. June Moxie's white figure suddenly disappeared in the dazzling sword light. When the sword light dissipated, June Moxie was nowhere to be seen. Mei Xuan's figure was like lightning. She was actually able to find the only gap in the frenzied attacks of the swords and sabers and easily slip past them. She was like a wisp of invisible wind. Even if she occasionally came into contact with the sabers and swords that were slashing towards her, she would still be able to easily slip past the sharp edges of the blades. However, the king's sword in her hand was not gentle at all. These top experts of the elusive world of immortals had been playing with swords for their entire lives. Each of them was an expert in this field. Moreover, they had already learned that Mei Xuan's sword was a rare divine weapon in the world. At that time, several of them had suffered great losses. Not only were their weapons broken, but they had also lost an arm. This caused a sharp decline in their combat power. Until now, they had not been able to recover. Their strength had been reduced by more than half. Now that they saw Mei Xuan using the same trick again, how would they dare to fight her head-on? All of their swords were focused on the break formula. When they saw that their attacks had failed, they all retreated. Mei Xuan's white robes fluttered in the wind. Her sword was like a dragon, pointing south and attacking north. Everyone was intimidated by her unparalleled reputation and the peerless sharpness of her divine sword. They retreated step by step. For a moment, it became Mei Xuan who had the advantage of being outnumbered. The reason why Mei Xuan was able to achieve such a result was not only because of her own strength and the sharpness of her divine weapon, but also because there were too many of them. There was no need to look for a target. Wherever her divine sword passed, there were enemies. She only needed to fight. Although the Hermitage's side had 29 top experts, there were only 3 or 4 of them who could actually fight with Mei Xuan at the same time. There were too many of them. Their hands and feet were tied, and they couldn't fight to their fullest. Ning Wuqing saw that the situation was not favorable for him. His face darkened. He understood the reason behind it and immediately shouted, "Hu Menglong, you will lead your 3 brothers to attack. The rest of you, retreat for now. Split into groups of 4 and take turns to attack. As soon as the situation becomes critical, attack immediately. The moment the second group attacks, the first group must retreat immediately. Those who have not participated in the battle, form a slightly larger encirclement outside the battlefield. Be prepared for her to abandon the battle and escape at any time. If there is an opportunity, call out to Enqing." There was a whistling sound in the battlefield. Most of the people immediately retreated, leaving only 4 people to surround Mei Xuan and continue the battle. 4 snow-white long swords were like snowflakes, stacked layer upon layer. They were like lightning flashing across the sky, shooting out cold streaks of electricity in all directions. Mei Xuan's breath was long and steady. Her body was soft and graceful as she floated around. It was obvious that she was at ease and at ease. She did not panic at all because of the opponent's tactic of taking turns to attack. Use your inner strength to fight. Collide. We have the absolute advantage in terms of numbers. It is to our advantage to exhaust her. Ning Wuqing shouted from outside the battlefield, "Hu Menglong. Are you stupid? She must have sustained serious injuries from the battle with the Supreme Golden City. Even if she is not injured, she must have used up a lot of her inner strength. Why are you still using weapons to attack? Use your palm strength. Use your Xian Qi. Force her to fight with brute force. Increase her exhaustion, wear her down, and trap her to death." Hu Menglong was the other superior supreme martial artist of the Hermitage. He was one of the 3 people who were fighting alongside him. After they came to the Hermitage, the 4 of them became brothers because of their mutual affinity. Since then, they often practiced martial arts together. After almost 100 years, their minds were faintly connected and their tacit understanding had reached the point of perfection. At this moment, when the 4 of them attacked together, they unexpectedly felt their hands and feet being tied. They were all greatly shocked. Although everyone knew that Mei Xuan was the #1 beast king of Tian Fa and her strength was tyrannical, they did not expect her to be at this level. One should know that Hu Menglong's strength was already above the supreme martial artist level. Although his 3 sworn brothers had not reached his level, they were infinitely close to it. Shen Xian was at the 12th level. Every step was like stepping into the heavens. Shen Xian was below the 4th level. Shen Xian was only at the level of an ordinary Shen Xian. Once he reached the 5th level, his strength would take a huge leap and he would be at the supreme martial artist level. As for Shen Xian, when he reached the 9th level, he would be beyond the supreme martial artist level. He would be at the superior supreme martial artist level. But if he could surpass Shen Xian to the 12th level, he would be at a whole new level, the supreme martial artist level. That was Mei Xuan's current level. And this level was infinitely close to the true peak of this world's strength. Life has an end, but martial arts has no end. This sentence was applicable to any world. If a martial arts genius could have an unlimited lifespan, then no one could say what kind of height he would reach. In fact, it did not even need to be a genius. As long as one had a long enough life, anyone could have extremely powerful strength. Unfortunately, the limitations of human lifespan had eliminated this possibility. Hu Menglong roared and leaped up. He sheathed his sword in an instant and spread out his hands. An overwhelming force surged out of his palms. His body changed positions in the air repeatedly. In an instant, the entire sky seemed to be filled with pairs of huge handprints, covering the sky and covering the sun. The handprints swept out in all directions and landed with a loud rumble. He had obviously listened to Ning Wuqing's words. Now was not the time to be a hero. Even if they were to exchange injuries for injuries, as long as they could aggravate Mei Xueyan's internal injuries, even if it was just a little, it would be extremely helpful to the overall situation today. Chapter 573. When Mei Xueyan heard Ning Wuqing's words, she couldn't help but laugh mockingly and said, "Ning Wuqing, you're really shameless as a world protector. You're really unscrupulous and unscrupulous. Not only are you ganging up on me and taking turns to fight me, you're even prepared to use your hidden weapons at any time. The Hermitage is really worthy of being a big sect, your methods are really open and aboveboard, even your despicable actions are carried out in the open. This venerable is full of admiration for you." As he said this, his body turned nimbly, and he actually dodged the attacks that had no space to dodge. Then, he slashed out 4 times, forcing the 4 powerful enemies back one by one. This sentence caused everyone's faces to turn red with embarrassment. Before these people had entered the Hermitage, any one of them had roamed the pugilistic world unhindered, and had always been solitary experts. Now that they had entered the Hermitage, their strength was even greater than before, and their statuses were even more prestigious. But now that they were dealing with their enemies, they actually had to gang up on them and take turns to fight them, and even had to use hidden weapons to greet them. They all felt that they had lost all face. Ning Wuqing snorted coldly and said, "Venerable Mei, you can't hide the truth from me. There's no need to use your shoddy goading methods. We're here for the sake of the people of the world, so we naturally need to preserve our bodies for the war for seizing the heavens in the future. If we suddenly lose our lives in your hands while trying to be a hero, that would be a real waste. For the future of the continent, I, Ning Wuqing, have a clear conscience." What a good, clear conscience. Mei Xueyan let out a long roar, and suddenly laughed loudly. Not bad, not bad. This is indeed the style of the Hermitage. This kind of clear conscience can make people kill people after hearing it. Only then will they have a clear conscience. Before Mei Xueyan finished her sentence, she swung her long sword in a circle, and a brilliant sword flower shot out in all directions like a blooming peony. Then, she swung her sword in a circle again, and another sword flower flew out. Although she was holding a long sword in her hand, in the eyes of the crowd, it was like fireworks. Countless bright and dazzling sword flowers shot out continuously. Hu Menglong and his brothers, who were fighting barehanded, suddenly fell into a difficult situation. They were in a sorry state. Ning Wuqing's shameless words had undoubtedly infuriated Mei Xueyan, and there was no room for mercy. At this moment, Hu Menglong and his brothers could be said to be suffering in silence. They could only dodge with all their might. In their calculations, since they had already abandoned their swords and used their palms, then how high would the status of Venerable Mei be? Why would he lower himself and use a sword to deal with an empty-handed opponent? This was a matter of a top-notch powerhouse's dignity and demeanor. If the Venerable Mei had kept his long sword, then the 4 of them would have found a chance to fight her head-on. As long as they could fight her head-on, they would win. When one's internal organs were injured, the most important thing was to avoid being shaken. Even if the Venerable Mei was really uninjured, it would consume a lot of Xian Qi and energy to fight with her palms. The more energy consumed, the more advantageous it would be. But they had miscalculated. They never expected that the 4 of them would have kept their swords and attacked with their palms. However, Mei Xueyan did not care about the demeanor of a powerhouse. She still relied on the sharpness of her sword to attack fiercely. Not only did she break their palms, but the 4 of them were also in a dangerous situation. Ning Wuqing was right. If they used weapons, they would not be able to fight her head-on. Mei Xueyan's sword was too sharp and powerful. They were afraid that before they could fight her head-on, their weapons would be broken. How could they fight her head-on? However, although they could fight her head-on with their palms, the opponent was still using a sword. The sword's aura was everywhere. No matter how dense the palms were, they could not withstand the sword's aura. They were in an even more awkward situation. Could he really use his palms of flesh and blood to fight head-on against the divine sword that could cut through iron like mud? Wouldn't that be even more suicidal? They did not know that when Mei Xueyan saw that they had abandoned their swords and used their palms, she had planned to keep her sword as well. However, at this moment, Jun Moxie's voice came into Mei Xueyan's ears, "Don't let go of your sword. They know that you are injured. That is a mistake. If you let go of your sword, they will see through you. Why are you still so stupid? They are attacking you without regard for their status, and you are still talking about morality with them." Jun Moxie's voice was really domineering. Mei Xueyan's heart softened. She listened to him obediently and continued to attack with her sword. It was indeed a great advantage. Although it was somewhat out of line with her identity, a sweet smile appeared at the corner of her mouth because of this sentence. Jun Moxie, who was invisible, was even more disdainful. He knew that his opponent had a sword that could cut through gold and jade, but he still chose to use his palms instead. How stupid! What status? What demeanor? Could it be more important than his life? Besides, since hermitage was so shameless, why should he care about the rules of the pugilistic world? I am the rules. Venerable Mei, you are the Lord of Tian Fa. How dare you use a sword to bully an empty-handed person? This is so unfair. I feel ashamed for you. Ning Wuqing was anxious when he saw the situation. He did not expect that Mei Xueyan would be so thick-skinned and continue to use her sword. In his memory, this was not the style of the Venerable Mei. Ning Wuqing, if you want to be fair, how about a one-on-one duel? Even if you come with 100 people to take turns to fight me, this Venerable will still fight you to the end. Mei Xueyan sneered and said, "You still have the face to say the word fair? You only saw that I was using my sword. Why didn't you say that there were 4 of you?" Ning Wuqing was speechless. After a while, he said angrily, "Venerable Mei, it seems that you have learned a lot from your little lover. However, young people will regret it one day. If you, the number 1 of Tian Fa, get kicked out of the Jun family and become an abandoned wife, don't blame me for not warning you." He was at his wit's end, but he suddenly used this method in an attempt to infuriate Mei Xueyan and create an opportunity. But he did not know that it was this unforgiving sentence that had truly aroused Mei Xueyan's murderous intent. Despicable. Mei Xueyan's eyebrows were raised and she shouted. Her sword was like a raging river, and her attacks became even more fierce. Hu Manglong and his brothers could not help but complain, secretly cursing Ning Wuqing's rotten idea. They wanted to take out their swords again, but they did not have the chance. Why did this guy have to provoke her for no reason? He put us in danger for no reason. Ning Wuqing was a little surprised. He watched the fight in the field while paying attention to Jun Moxie's movements. For someone as experienced and astute as him, how could he ignore any factors that could affect the future? But he still could not figure out why Jun Moxie had suddenly disappeared. And why did he disappear so abruptly and so mysteriously? In his heart, he could still clearly remember that Jun Moxie seemed to have become one with his sword and unleashed thousands of sword rays in the air. But it did not hit anyone present. And after that dazzling sword ray disappeared, Jun Moxie's figure also disappeared. This turn of events was truly strange. And this Jun Moxie's movement technique seemed to have been taught by his master. He had to reevaluate his evaluation of this kid. And he also had to be careful of sneak attacks from behind. At this time, Hu Manglong howled in grief and indignation. One of his brothers had been ambushed by Mei Xueyan's marvelous sword aura. A long and deep wound was cut from his shoulder to below his ribs. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. And this was because Mei Xueyan was worried that she could not expose too much of her strength, so she did not use her full strength. Otherwise, with her real strength, how could a Xuanwu who was not even a supreme martial artist be spared? Ning Wuqing's expression did not change. Lengleng ordered, Hu Menglong and the other three, retreat. The other group, attack. Hu Menglong shouted, I will not retreat. I want to avenge my third brother. Chief Ning, my brother's blood is still here, and it is still steaming. How can I retreat? I will not rest until this hatred is avenged. He could clearly see that his brother's ribs were still gushing with fresh blood. The wound had been completely burst open by the abdominal pressure, and his internal organs had subsequently rushed out. At the edge, the white ribs were broken. It was a ghastly sight to behold. Mei Xueyan's seemingly gentle slash didn't seem to be fatal at first glance. However, everyone present could see that the seemingly gentle slash contained an immense amount of sword qi. It didn't reveal its sharpness and only erupted after a while. It even directly cut open that person's abdomen, leaving him with no way to save him. Although he wouldn't die immediately, with such severe injuries, there was no hope for him to survive. Ning Wuqing scolded coldly, Hu Menglong. I told you to retreat. Hu Menglong roared at the sky. His eyes were bloodshot. He ignored Ning Wuqing's order and rushed forward with a roar. His brother's tragic death had made him lose his mind. He was like a crazy demon. Suddenly, the expert who had his abdomen cut let out a shrill cry. He shouted miserably, Big brother, I will go first. The injured expert knew that he was not far from death and was shocked to see his elder brother taking revenge for him. Disregarding his own life, he attacked the enemy without a care for his own life. His death was imminent and he could not help but make up his mind. He did not bother to tend to his own injuries and forcefully gathered the remaining Xian Qi in his body. Suddenly, a thick black aura appeared on his body. He howled like a wolf and without dodging, he pounced towards Mei Xueyan. He let his intestines hang outside his body, and rushed forward. Although his injury was fatal, his strength was close to the level of a supreme martial artist. Now that he was fighting with all his strength, without any regard for his own safety, his power was surprisingly great. Mei Xueyan's eyes turned cold. With a pu sound, her sword had accurately pierced through that person's heart. But that person did not retreat. He gathered his last breath, widened his eyes, and spread his arms. He rushed forward quickly, as if he wanted to hug Mei Xueyan. Mei Xueyan did not dare to be careless. She flew backward, turned around, and gave an invisible kick to his chest. Only then did that person's corpse fly away. The strong Xian energy spread everywhere, and that person's body exploded into a bloody pulp in midair. Chapter 574. Frogs at the bottom of a well, how would you know how vast the heavenly river is? If I don't give you guys a taste of my might, you guys will become more and more daring. Mei Xueyan laughed coldly, and her eyes flashed. Her body, which was originally in the air, floated up again. She turned around gracefully in midair, and with her head down and legs up, she held her sword with both hands instead of one hand. Then, she slashed down with all her might. This strike was truly earth-shattering. Woo! A sharp howl suddenly rang out. In front of the 7 experts, a silver light wall suddenly appeared. It flickered with cold light and completely condensed into a solid form. Although it was just a simple slash from top to bottom, the range of this slash covered the entire battlefield. At the same time, the 7 experts felt that this sword had a terrifying feeling that there was no way to avoid it. Many of their vital points were covered by this sword. Before the sword light arrived, the sword qi had already hit their faces, making them feel cold. There was no room to retreat. The only way to deal with it was to fight head-on. Only by trading one's life for another's would there be a chance of survival. Such a terrifying ultimate killing move, it was believed that anyone who used it would need to go through the process of accumulating power before they could release it. But in the hands of Mei Shuyan, this logic was overturned. Just like that, he leaped up and pressed down. This sword had already been casually swung out. How could this not be unexpected? The 7 experts roared at the same time. They gathered all the energy they could muster at this moment and launched a desperate counterattack. Hu Menglong took the lead with his sword and instantly burst forth with all of his strength. Without holding anything back, he rushed towards the silver wall of light. He didn't want to win, he just wanted to perish together with his opponent. He roared crazily and rushed forward with his body and sword. He had left everything in the world behind him. At this moment, there was only revenge in his heart. The sword was like a meteor, arriving in a flash. Everyone stared wide-eyed at this earth-shattering strike. They felt as if their souls had been stolen away. This time, it was a real head-on collision. If Venerable Mei really had internal injuries, or even if he wasn't injured, as long as his yuan power had been greatly depleted, then the outcome of the battle must be determined after this strike. Or they could escape, but they had to be prepared for it. They could not afford to fail at the last step. Everyone held their breaths and focused all their attention on the scene. Every possible route that could lead to Mei Shuyan's escape route was carefully monitored. Bang! Hu Menglong let out a shrill cry. Together with his sword, he was the first to crash into the wall of light formed by the silver sword aura. Pa! 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 With 3 crisp sounds, the sword in Hu Menglong's hand broke into 3 pieces. Then, it turned into iron dust that filled the sky and dissipated. Hu Menglong's body seemed to have been swallowed by a monster. First, his right hand that was holding the sword disappeared. Then, his body that was flying in the air started to disappear from his head, shoulders, upper body, waist, legs, and soles of his feet. Bit by bit, it quickly disappeared into nothingness. It was as if there was an incomparably ferocious wild beast in front of him that was slowly swallowing Hu Menglong into its stomach. It was neither fast nor slow, and it was calm and unhurried. Boom! The remaining 6 experts' attacks finally came into contact with Mei Shuyan's sword aura. Like a sudden clap of thunder, millions of rays of cold light shot out in all directions. At the same time, the 6 experts' bodies were sent flying. Their flesh was torn and their bodies were bleeding profusely. Their hands were empty. The swords and knives that were in their hands had been turned into nothingness. Blood flowed from their mouths and they screamed in agony as they fell from the sky. At this moment, they no longer had the demeanor of a powerful expert. They were waving their arms and legs as they fell from the sky. They couldn't even change their positions in the air. This was because all of their energy had been released in that one strike and they had suffered the strongest rebound. At this moment, it would be difficult for them to even move their little fingers, let alone change their positions in the air to control their fall. As the sword aura faded away, Mei Shuyan, who had won the battle, staggered backwards. Her snow-white robe was bleeding from 7 to 8 places, like a red plum blossom in the snow. It was eye-catching and shocking. Her complexion turned green and white, then instantly turned pink, and after changing 3 times, she finally spat out a small mouthful of blood with a wah sound. The 7 experts' attacks had been destroyed by Mei Shuyan's sword. Puff! 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 The 6 figures fell to the ground one after another. The crowd hadn't recovered from the huge shock. They turned their heads around like wooden puppets and saw that the 6 experts had fallen to the ground and were rolling on the ground. They seemed to have lost control of their bodies. Every roll left a large pool of blood on the snow. Screams and groans could be heard, but 3 of them only rolled a few times after falling to the ground, and then there was no more sound. He didn't even let out a slight groan. It was obvious that he had died instantly. Some had lost their arms, some had lost their legs. However, those who lost their arms and legs were still alive. Some of them had suffered 7 to 8 sword strikes and had no chance of survival. Tian Fa Heaven Punishing Sword. Everyone couldn't help but think of this name that was filled with awe and respect. That was the ultimate killing move that the previous lords of Tian Fa used to deal with the strange races in the war for seizing the heavens. For 10,000 years, there had been no exceptions. But today, it was finally used on a human. The tyrannical power of this sword caused everyone's hearts to beat wildly. One sword to defeat 7 supreme martial artists. What a terrifying sword. What a peerless sword that could shock the heavens and make the gods weep. This was simply a miracle. And right now, this unbelievable miracle had appeared in front of their eyes. Just as everyone was in shock, suddenly, another silver ray of light, bringing with it the color of blood, shot up into the sky. If Mei Shuiyan's sword was like thunder from the 9 heavens, then this sword was like the summoning of hell. One shook the heavens and the earth, the other was silent, one was like the thunder of spring, the other was like a drizzle. The silver light came from behind them, silently and at a high speed. It was an extremely powerful and shocking sword. Just when everyone's hearts were trembling, filled with fear, and completely defenseless, this sword came out of nowhere. Assassination, it was another assassination. This kind of perfect timing was impossible for anyone who wasn't a top-notch assassin to achieve. One had to know that this sword was aimed at a supreme martial artist expert. But even so, this sword was still able to destroy everything in its path. It was indestructible. Godly sword, blood of yellow flame. The evil monarch of this generation had finally unleashed this mysterious and marvelous sword at this moment. The sword light silently flashed past the waist of an expert, and then came out from the same position of the second expert, bringing along a trail of blood. Then, it ruthlessly slashed into the waist of the third expert. The third person finally let out a shrill scream, but the scream was cut off abruptly. He wanted to pull out his sword, and his hand was already on the hilt of his sword. However, when he pulled out his sword and was about to counterattack, he realized that his legs were firmly planted on the ground from his waist down. Only his upper body was flying in the air. He was shocked and panicked. He circulated his Xian Qi with all his might. But when he activated his Xian Qi, he realized that all his internal organs were gushing out from the hole in his lower body. He fell heavily to the ground, but he immediately used his sword to support half of his body and stood up. He was like a wooden stake that was planted flat on the ground. His eyes looked around in panic and hatred, but he didn't see anything. That sword ray had already disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. He wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, he spat out a mouthful of blood, the only mouthful of blood, because his blood had already flowed out from the hole in his lower body. The pure Xian Qi of the supreme martial artist level temporarily preserved his last bit of Xian Qi. Unfortunately, the rapid loss of his life essence had already caused him to step on the road to the Yellow Springs. He let out a moan that sounded like a sigh, and finally fell to the ground powerlessly. His eyes were wide open like a dead fish, looking at the empty space in front of him, as if he was still puzzled about something. The 2 supreme martial artists who were standing beside him had a strange expression of extreme fear on their faces. They subconsciously touched their waists with their hands, and their faces immediately changed. Because they suddenly felt that their stomachs were very comfortable and warm, so warm that they wanted to just fall asleep, sleep until the end of time, and never wake up again. That was a kind of warmth that went deep into their souls. This kind of comfortable feeling would only appear when there was a lot of internal bleeding, when the boiling blood left the blood vessels and flowed into the abdomen, using its own boiling temperature to warm the internal organs of the human body. This kind of extreme comfort was the omen of death. The 2 of them widened their eyes in fear, and lowered their heads in disbelief, looking at their waists. The next moment, the accumulated blood in their abdomen finally broke through the obstruction, and suddenly spurted out with a chi-chi sound. The 3 of them just stood there strangely, but from each of their waists, thin lines of blood continuously spurted out, as if the area around their waists was a fine fountain. Although it was fine, it was strong and powerful, and actually spurted out several feet away. On the snowy ground around each of them, there was a neat and round red circle, and in the air, there was a hazy mist of blood that constantly replenished this circle. The source was their bodies. It was a beautiful and strange red circle. It also carried the shadow of death, and a terrifying murderous intent, as if the gates of hell could open at any time. Only then did the two of them scream, and only then did they understand what had happened. They screamed in fear, but did not dare to move. Because, if they moved, their upper and lower bodies would be separated. But if they did not move, would their upper and lower bodies not be separated? After all, cutting them in half was already an irreversible fact. Brother. Chapter 575. Today's fourth chapter. Still working hard, fifth chapter. Calling for everyone's support. Thank you. Even the people of Hermitage did not know that one of the three supreme martial artists who had just been split into two was Ning Wuqing's younger brother, Qing Fengyi. Although they did not share the same surname, they were of the same blood. Ning Wuqing had put in a lot of effort for this brother of his to become a supreme martial artist and then enter Hermitage. The two of them had spent their entire lives together, but they had never imagined that they would be split into two here, forever separated. Close to 200 years of kinship had turned into nothingness after this blade of blood. Ning Wuqing had gone mad. He roared, "Jun Moxie! I know you did it. Come out if you have the guts." He immediately realized that Jun Moxie's mysterious disappearance must have been in preparation for this attack. But he had already realized this, and yet the other party had still succeeded. At this moment, Ning Wuqing was filled with remorse, grief and indignation. He only felt that his heart was suffocating and filled with anger. It was as if he wanted to tear open his stomach and dig out all his internal organs to vent his anger. Suffocating anger. Jun Moxie, you despicable little bastard. Come out here. Come out. You bastard, you bastard. You only know how to sneak attack from behind, a butcher and executioner. You immoral bastard, you should be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Ning Wuqing roared crazily. There was no trace of his usual calmness. Under his roar, the two experts who were still standing, but had already been cut into two, finally swayed a little. Their eyes were filled with sorrow, and then their faces flushed red. One of them had a square face, big ears, and a tall figure. It was obvious that if he had been young, he would have been a handsome man. This person was Qing Fengyi, Ning Wuqing's half-brother. Qing Fengyi sighed softly and slowly turned to look at his former colleagues. He said indifferently, "I'm going." Everyone's faces were filled with grief and anger. He calmly looked at his abdomen. Blood had already stopped spurting out, but it was still gushing out, gurgling and flowing down his robe. There was already a large pool of sticky blood under his feet. He raised his head, and with a low but heavy voice, he slowly said, "Everyone, take care." Only then did he turn around to look at Ning Wuqing. Ning Wuqing's entire body was trembling. He stretched out his trembling hands, wanting to hug his brother, but he was afraid that if he moved, he would end the last bit of his brother's life, so he did not dare to move. He reached out his hands to his brother, not daring to touch him. Qing Fengyi looked at Ning Wuqing and suddenly revealed a miserable smile. He forcefully held his last breath and said slowly, "Big brother. I have been raised by you all my life, and I have learned all my skills. My only wish is to be able to call you big brother in public. Although I can't, but I really want to, big brother. I have been working hard." Ning Wuqing's hair and beard were standing on end. His tears gushed out like a river that had opened its floodgates. His whole body was trembling, and tears had already blurred his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, "Brother. My blood brother. I will now announce to the whole world that you are my blood brother. Good brother. You are also a Ning. A member of the Ning family." Qing Fengyi smiled, and his face was filled with satisfaction. His eyes slowly became lifeless, and he said in a low voice, "I am going to be filial to my parents in the netherworld, big brother, you, live well, don't let us worry for you." Suddenly, his body bent, and his upper body slowly fell forward. Ning Wuqing rushed forward and hugged the lower half of his body. But Qing Fengyi's breath had already stopped, and there was no more sound. Only his face was filled with sincere satisfaction. Ning Wuqing suddenly burst into tears. Although he called himself heartless, cut off all his emotions, and lived alone for the rest of his life, he valued the only blood relation he had in this world. His brother's death was like tearing Ning Wuqing's heart into two. "Brother! Your surname should be Ning, your surname has always been Ning." Ning Wuqing roared at the sky. He was so regretful that he wanted to cut his own throat with his sword. All these years, when the tragedy happened to his family, his second mother and his younger brother fled for their lives, his entire family was massacred, his fiancée was brutally raped to death. Ning Wuqing hated everyone from then on, including his second mother and brother. He stubbornly believed that under the circumstances, his second mother could have escaped with his fiancée, but she only brought his son. So Ning Wuqing could not forgive her. So although he cared for his brother, he never acknowledged his identity as a member of the Ning family. Qing Fengyi knew that his brother could not let go of the knot in his heart, and had no choice but to follow his mother's surname. Until today, Ning Wuqing finally realized that he had made a grave mistake. He always knew what his brother had been yearning for, and he knew it very well. But it was only until his brother died in front of him that his last hope was fulfilled. His biggest hope. But even if it was fulfilled now, what was the use? Looking at the satisfied expression on Qing Fengyi's face, Ning Wuqing suddenly felt a tearing pain in his heart. It was as if those salty tears had flowed into his heart. His brother's entire life was only for this one sentence from him. But he had always been stingy and did not give it. Ning Wuqing suddenly felt the world turn dark. He slowly raised his head. Everyone suddenly realized that his eyes were red with tears. Tears of blood. Mei Xueyan stood far away. This was the best moment to strike, the best chance to destroy the enemy. But Mei Xueyan did not strike, only looking at the enemy with pity. Jun Mo Xia also did not make his move at this moment. Although he knew that this timing was even better than the previous timing, but in the face of this world's true feelings and deep remorse, even if he was an enemy, Jun Mo Xia would still give him a chance to bid farewell. This was not being stubborn. It was human nature. Jun Moxie was a man of true feelings. He would rather give his enemy some time to feel warm. Jun Mo Xia didn't regret killing them and causing them to be separated by life and death. They were enemies. Either you kill me, or I kill you. There was no such thing as regret or sympathy. If there was sympathy or even regret, it would be a woman's benevolence. It would be digging one's own grave. But facing the true feelings of the world, even the evil monarch's killer heart would not disturb them at this moment. He only appeared silently beside Mei Xueyan. His eyes were cold as he looked at Ning Wuqing and the rest who were immersed in grief. You are in grief now, but I can give you a chance. You can regret and vent your sorrow. I understand your feelings, so I will wait for you. But when you recover, we will fight again. He wouldn't show any mercy. The evil monarch had his own principles. Ning Wuqing placed his head on his brother's chest and gently rubbed it. He knelt on the ground and trembled. He murmured, "Second brother, my good second brother. Ning Fengyi, you are Ning Fengyi, you will always be Ning Fengyi. Big brother is wrong, it is big brother's fault, big brother deserves to die, big brother has made you suffer for a lifetime, big brother has let you down, big brother has let you down." Ning Wuqing's voice was extremely low as he slowly spoke. His originally gray hair, in this short period of time, suddenly turned completely silver white, without any impurities. White hair in an instant, silver hair in an instant. In his arms, Qing Fengyi lay quietly. There was some mockery and regret on his face, but more than that, there was peace and satisfaction. Mei Shuyan sighed softly and said, I did not expect Ning Wuqing to be such a stubborn person. Jun Moxie said lightly, you are wrong. Mei Shuyan turned to look at him and asked curiously, isn't that so? Jun Moxie said heavily, I believe that most people in this world are stubborn people. They all have the most beautiful side of their hearts. Even if one was a heinous criminal, or an evil person, whether it was a pervert or a prostitute, they all had their own sacred place in their hearts. This part of divinity is true love. Jun Mo Xia sighed lightly and said, a person's true love is something that everyone only experiences once in their lifetime. But once they fall in love, it will never change. Therefore, even a playboy has someone he loves the most. Even a prostitute who has a pair of jade-like arms and a bit of rosy lips has someone she loves the most. That's why there are so many people sighing in their dreams at night. That's why there are so many regrets in the world. Mei Shuyan frowned slightly, this is different. How can a playboy and a prostitute have true love? Jun Moxie laughed and said, but how do you know there is no true love? A playboy is influenced by his environment and gradually becomes a playboy. Isn't it the same for a prostitute? If there was someone who grew up in luxury, would such a woman become a prostitute unless there was a major change? If a person grows up in poverty and never has a full meal until adulthood, will such a person become a playboy? So, it is all because of the environment. He sighed and said, so, in order to get his love, Murong Xiu, the emperor of Tianxiang did not hesitate to slaughter Yi Guhan's entire family. And Yi Guhan, for his true love, has never changed. He would rather betray the heavens than betray you. Also, my third uncle waited in a daze for my third aunt. My third aunt stayed alone at the top of a snowy mountain for 10 years for her true love. My mother was willing to go into a deep sleep for my father. This is all caused by true love. True love can accomplish anything, but it can also lead to evil. He was like a king who ruled over everything, standing calmly above the clouds, looking down at all the living beings in the world. Mei Shuyan was actually in a daze. At this moment, she suddenly realized that this unique aura that Jun Moxie had unintentionally displayed was not inferior to her own Tian Fa King's aura. In fact, it was even more transcendent. It was as if he was born with it, majestic and imposing. Jun Moxie tilted his head, and looked at her strangely, and said, what are you looking at? Why are you so entranced by it? Mei Shuyan did not notice, and said in a daze, I'm looking at you, you're so beautiful. Jun Moxie was stunned. He did not expect that with Mei Shuyan's arrogance and coldness, she could actually say such words of love. Caught off guard, even with Jun Moxie's 2 lifetimes of thick skin, he could not help but blush a little. For a man to be praised, you're so beautiful, was indeed a little embarrassing. Mei Shuyan finally came back to her senses after saying that. Her face instantly turned red, and she could not help but lower her head. Although Jun Moxie's face was a little red from this sudden attack, when he saw how shy Mei Shuyan was, he immediately recovered and said with a cheeky smile, then, since you're so beautiful, are you willing to suffer some injuries tonight? Mei Shuyan's face instantly turned red, and she pinched him with all her might. Suddenly, she asked fiercely, oh right, I forgot to ask you. Earlier, you were talking about true love, and you said that a person only has one true love in their life. Then let me ask you, you have so many female friends, where is your true love? Jun Mo Xia was instantly flabbergasted. In fact, he didn't know how to reply for a moment. He had just said it out of the blue, and did not know that he had unknowingly dragged himself into this. How was he going to explain this? His mouth was open for a while, and he finally recovered. However, he still could not answer Mei Shuyan's question, because he really did not have an answer. But at the same time, Mei Shuyan's words finally made Jun Moxie start to consider this matter in his heart. Yes, I have quite a few beautiful women by my side. So far, I have confirmed my relationship with Guan Qinghan, Dugu Xiaoyi, and Mei Xueyan. Even if there are only these 3 women, then who is my true love? Out of these 3 women, any one of them is an unparalleled beauty. Who do I love the most? Jun Moxie was a little stunned. Was he too much of a playboy? If he had to choose one of these 3 women, how should he choose? Should he choose Mei Xueyan? She really seemed to be the one he loved the most. But what about Guan Qinghan? She was cold and beautiful, and she gave up everything for the Jun family. She did not hesitate to use her chastity to save his life. All these years, she had given up so much for the Jun family without complaint or regret. Jun Moxie felt that he owed her a lot, and he also had a deep-rooted affection for Guan Qinghan. How could he give her up? If he really gave up, Guan Qinghan would no longer have the courage to continue living, and she could die at any time. This guilt would accompany him for the rest of his life. Could he give up on Dugu Xiaoyi? Dugu Xiaoyi was innocent and cute, and she was infatuated with him. She had already fallen in love with him when he was at his most debauchee. For him, she did not hesitate to travel to Tiannan. She was even more afraid that he would not want her. She would rather get an aphrodisiac to make it a fait accompli. Although this matter did not succeed because of the little girl's immaturity, it was an indisputable fact that Dugu Xiaoyi did not care about anything for him. Moreover, she had shocked the entire Tianxiang city by entering the city with her pregnant belly. She hadn't even given herself the slightest chance to retreat. Who would be willing to give up such a true love? How could he give it up? Even if he had a heart of stone, could he be so heartless? And there was also Mei Xueyan. This was even more impossible to give up. Mei Xueyan was the king of Tianfa. She had met him by chance and followed him all the way. The 2 of them had worked together, and their hearts had already become one. And he had finally changed from teasing her at the beginning to never leave her side. Mei Xueyan had been pure and clean all her life. This was the first time she had fallen in love, and she was always thinking about him. How could he give her up? If he really did that, even Jun Moxie would look down on himself. Not to mention the fact that Mei Xueyan had single-handedly stopped the illusory Blood Ocean's 2 great masters, defeated Huang Taiyang, and even swore to live and die with the Jun family under the siege of the 3 Holy Lands. Which one of these things was not good for him? If he really gave them up, Mei Xueyan might not collapse or commit suicide. But she would definitely be disheartened and go to the Tianfa forest, never to return again. This was something that was certain. No matter how Jun Moxie thought about it, he couldn't give up a single one of them. He couldn't even bear to give up a single one of them. Towards Guan Qinghan, he respected and adored her. In front of Guan Qinghan, he often had a warm and comfortable feeling. He had a feeling that he needed someone to take care of him, and he longed for someone to protect him. This feeling was even stronger and more obvious after their relationship in Tiannan. Although Jun Moxie didn't want to admit it, he clearly knew in his heart that he really had this kind of desire. Towards Dugu Xiaoyi, he was affectionate and doting, as if she was his soulmate. After all, she hated him so much in the past. Only Dugu Xiaoyi had given him that comfort. Although he was completely able to get through it, that extra thought was like a sweet spring appearing in a desert. Apart from his own family, the only support he had was from the outside world. Towards Mei Xueyan, Jun Moxie had a strange feeling. It was a feeling of his heart throbbing. It was a feeling of mutual understanding. It was a feeling of supporting each other in times of need. It was a feeling of living side by side. This feeling was meaningful and warm, it was a feeling of satisfaction and happiness. If he really wanted to find a feeling of love among these 3 women, it would undoubtedly be Mei Xueyan. But how could he give up the other 2? Towards Guan Qinghan and Dugu Xiaoyi, was there really no love? Yes. It was just that it wasn't as obvious as it was for Mei Xueyan. Could it be that I am such a fickle person? Jun Moxie asked himself in his heart. He actually forgot to answer Mei Shuyan's question. For the first time, he was really distressed. Who was my true love? Just as he was thinking about this awkward question that was hard to answer, Ning Wuqing, who was still grieving over the death of his brother, had already stood up. He carried his brother's half-body and stood up. His white hair fluttered messily in the air. His body was still as straight as a sword, but he no longer had the elegance and bearing he had before. He turned around slowly and raised his head. The remaining masters of hermitage suddenly exclaimed. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan looked at him, and they couldn't help but be surprised. Ning Wuqing's originally rosy face had now turned gray, and wrinkles were piled up. Ning Wuqing's xian qi was profound, coupled with the fact that he had always taken good care of himself, even though he was close to 200 years old, but from his face, he looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. But at this moment, he looked old, like an old farmer who had never cultivated xian qi, and had toiled his whole life. His face was full of wrinkles, as if he was going to fall with the wind. He was emaciated. Chapter 577. The moment Ning Wuqing opened his mouth, everyone realized that Ning Wuqing's voice had become unusually hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. Although his tone was calm, everyone could tell that Ning Wuqing's heart was dead. There was no greater sorrow than a dead heart. His brother, whom he had depended on for survival, had suddenly passed away after nearly 200 years of reunion. Ning Wuqing no longer had any desire to live. He only had the thought of revenge. Regardless of whether he could take revenge or not, it was believed that Ning Wuqing would not be able to live on this world anymore. Because Ning Wuqing's withered face had already told everyone one thing, Ning Wuqing had already transferred all his xian energy to his dantian. Even the potential of his bones, the protection of his organs. Xian energy. And the potential of his life. He no longer maintained his youthful appearance, no longer maintained his elegant demeanor. His temperament, his appearance, everything else was not important. What he wanted was revenge. This kind of accumulation of power could at least double his power, but once it was unleashed, he would be like a lamp that had run out of oil. Even if a deity came, he would not be able to bring the dead back to life. All in one throw. Regardless of whether Jun Moxie died or not, Ning Wuqing was dead for sure. Ning Wuqing had placed himself in a dead end first. It was clear that his desire for revenge was very urgent. Ning Wuqing carefully placed his brother's body on the ground and slowly stood up. His face was full of remorse and hatred. Jun Moxie sighed and looked at him with pity. Life and death, it's just a reincarnation cycle. Everyone will experience this. Ning Wuqing, you have to restrain your grief and accept the vicissitudes of life. After all, the dead cannot come back to life. I feel very sorry for what happened. When he said this, even Mei Shuyan wanted to slap his mouth. You killed my brother, and now you want me to restrain my grief and accept the vicissitudes of life. Ning Wuqing laughed bitterly. He pointed at Jun Moxie and said, Jun Moxie, you killed my brother, and you want me to restrain my grief? Don't you think your words are a little funny? Jun Moxie snorted and said, Ning Wuqing, with your intelligence, it's hard for me to talk to you. Because you actually don't understand what I mean. Ning Wuqing roared at the sky, but do you think I can still calm down now? Jun Moxie, I don't need your crocodile tears. Ning Wuqing naturally understood what Jun Moxie meant. He wanted him to calm down and have a fair fight. However, although Ning Wuqing understood it, he did not appreciate it at all. Because what Jun Moxie said, it was fine to say that he had good intentions, but it was even more hateful to say that he had bad intentions. Rather than saying it was a reminder, it was more like adding fuel to the fire. After all, the person who said those words was the murderer. Therefore, when Jun Moxie earned a good reputation, it made Ning Wuqing lose his composure, and he could not calm down. When dealing with an enemy, he would do anything. Even if the other party was a lover, as long as they drew their swords, they were enemies. Jun Moxie never showed mercy to his enemies. Jun Moxie sighed. He had achieved his goal, so he was not in the mood to ridicule him anymore. He said, Ning Wuqing, I know you want to take revenge on me, right? Then come, I'll be waiting for you here. He paused and said sharply, Ning Wuqing, you only know that your brother is dead, and you want revenge. But have you thought about it? How many people have you killed in your life? How many people are waiting to take revenge on you? Your childish behavior amuses me. Those who died in your hands, their families, which one of them did not grieve as much as you do? Wronged? You have the nerve to say that. What about you? Jun Moxie. Do you think you are very noble? Have your hands not been stained with blood? Where's your conscience? Aren't you the same as me? Ning Wuqing roared madly, what right do you have to say that about me? You butcher. Me? I never said I was a good person. I'm certainly the same as you. In fact, I'm even more cruel and bloodthirsty than you. But I won't put on a face of being wronged like you. If I kill someone, others can naturally kill me. This is the law of the world. Just like how I killed your brother, and you want to take revenge on me. Jun Moxie Lenglang looked at him, Ning Wuqing, since you've decided to die, then I won't give you any more time to recover. It's just that you're crying because of someone's death. There's no meaning in living. Come on. Today will be the anniversary of your death next year. Jun Moxie's tongue was like a knife. His words made Ning Wuqing even more confused. Even his eyes became a little confused. Chief Ning. You're not in a stable state of mind now. Don't fall for Jun Moxie's provocation. It's more than enough to surround and kill this adulterous couple if we work together, someone shouted from behind. Ning Wuqing laughed bitterly. He didn't reply. He turned his wrist and unsheathed his long sword. A cold light fell on his palm like the ripples of autumn water. Now, action was the best answer. Ning Wuqing straightened his back, and his entire person seemed to have regained his original tall and straight arrogance in an instant. He was still like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed, radiating brilliance in all directions. However, this godly sword brought with it a madness of destruction. At this moment, Ning Wuqing's originally rapid breathing suddenly became calm again. It wasn't that Ning Wuqing could really calm his anger. He was just forcefully suppressing it. Because he was forcefully suppressing it, a strange flush appeared on his face. Ning Wuqing raised his long sword slowly and placed it in front of his chest. He gently stroked the blade with 2 fingers of his left hand, from the edge of the sword to the tip of the blade. He seemed to be talking to himself. He said, the sword I used in the past is called the Swimming Dragon Water-Splitting Sword. After I got that sword, I, Ning Wuqing, finally achieved great success in swordsmanship. I was able to repay kindness and revenge quickly. I slaughtered the whole family of my enemies. From that moment on, I, Ning Wuqing, dipped that sword in the blood of my enemies and wrote an oath, the Swimming Dragon Water-Splitting Sword is the king of the martial world. If the sword exists, the man exists. If the sword dies, the man dies. He took a deep breath and said with infinite nostalgia, that sword accompanied me for a lifetime of trials and tribulations. I was a hero for a lifetime. With one sword, no hero in the world dared to stop me for hundreds of years. I fought Shen Xian, killed supreme martial artists, and dominated the martial world. The sword is me, and I am the sword. One man and one sword, our souls fused and became inseparable. That day in the battle at the Jun family, the Swimming Dragon Water-Splitting Sword was accidentally broken by Venerable Mei. At that time, I felt that my time was coming. Or perhaps, I needed to kill Venerable Mei to erase this nightmare in my heart. Ning Wuqing's voice became calm as he spoke. However, as he gradually spoke, his body began to emit a threatening and sharp sword aura. Jun Moxie knew that Ning Wuqing was not suffering from a mental illness at this moment. He was actually talking about these superficial things at such a critical moment. It was not because he was reminiscing about the past. Instead, he was using his own narration to slowly recall the extraordinary years of the past, the glory of the past. He wanted to cultivate his confidence in winning every battle. He also wanted to give himself a reason to win. Today, my second brother has died tragically. I have also come to the border of life and death. Ning Wuqing slowly raised his head. His white hair fluttered even though there was no wind. It rose into the air and fluttered in the wind. On his wrinkled face, his sunken eyes flashed with a terrifying brilliance. He locked onto Jun Mo Xia and said word by word, "Fortunately, there is still such a talented young man to accompany me on my journey. This old man will be able to have more fun on this road to hell. As long as you die, I believe that Venerable Mei will not be able to survive. If this old man's life can be exchanged for the two of you being buried with me, it will be worth it." Jun Moxie smiled faintly and said, "Ning Wuqing, your second brother's long-cherished wish has been fulfilled. He can go on his journey without any regrets. Although it is sad, he has no regrets. You are not as lucky as your brother. Your journey to the netherworld is a foregone conclusion. But if you wish for this young master to accompany you on your journey to the netherworld, that's just wishful thinking. It's not that you are too weak. This young master will tell you the truth. Not to mention you, even if the lords of the three holy lands join forces, they may not be able to do it. Whether they can't or can't, this old man is destined to not be able to see it." Ning Wuqing smiled coldly and suddenly held his sword in front of his chest. His face was solemn and respectful as he bowed to Jun Moxie. He straightened his back and said, "This old man lost his senses just now. If young Master Jun had attacked at that time, I'm afraid this old man would not even have the chance to try and take revenge. It can be said that I owe young Master one more time. But the enmity of my brother is absolutely irreconcilable. Jun Moxie, after this bow, this old man no longer owes you anything. Life and death are determined by fate, riches and honor are determined by the heavens." Jun Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at him, almost thinking that this old man had gone mad. Just now, in order to kill Mei Shuiyan, he had resorted to all sorts of despicable, shameless, and filthy means could be found on him. But now, he was thanking the enemy who killed his own brother because the enemy didn't take the opportunity to assassinate him. That was putting the cart before the horse. When it was time to be concerned about his demeanor, he was more despicable than anyone else. But when it wasn't time to be concerned about his demeanor, he was concerned about his own reputation and elegance. This Ning Wuqing could be considered a freak of his generation. My generation can't compare. Jun Moxie. Please. Ning Wuqing's expression turned solemn as he straightened his sword, retracted his elbow, and retracted the sword. The tip of the sword brushed against his own ribs. Hidden edge. At that moment, Ning Wuqing's entire being had transformed into an invincible, peerless sword. The sword aura was overflowing, and the cold light shot out in all directions. Even his fluttering silver-white hair was like a peerless sword aura. Jun Moxie only felt a gust of chilling sword aura rushing towards him. What a sharp sword aura! It was truly unparalleled and unparalleled. The remaining 17 people of Hermitage took a step forward in unison, and the ground shook. All of them were filled with grief and indignation. They said in unison, "We will avenge our dead brothers, and we swear to live and die with Chief Ning." Ning Wuqing's upper body didn't move, and his lower body didn't move. His eyes were as calm as ever, but his aura was soaring, sweeping forward like raging waves. Finally, Ning Wuqing's aura had reached a peak. The peak of sword aura. Perhaps this was the ultimate embodiment of Ning Wuqing's peak achievement in this life. The sword aura all over his body suddenly shot out in all directions and collapsed. The long sword under his ribs actually shattered with a crack. At the moment of shattering, the scattered sword aura miraculously returned at a high speed, and gathered around Ning Wuqing's body like rivers converging into the sea. In the eyes of the crowd, Ning Wuqing was no longer a person at this moment. He was a sword. The sharpest and most unstoppable divine blade. Previously, it was just like a sword. But at this moment, it was a sword. The real unity of man and sword. The sword is me, and I am the sword. Chapter 578. Jun Moxie's indifferent face finally froze. He did not expect that Ning Wuqing would make a breakthrough at this critical moment. However, Ning Wuqing's breakthrough made Jun Moxie suddenly understand the truth. Swordsmanship. So that's how it is, extreme emotions can only make a breakthrough. Only in death can you make a breakthrough. Extreme emotions, extreme hatred, extreme swordsmanship. The true unity of man and sword, so that's how it is. Jun Moxie looked unblinkingly at Ning Wuqing, who was like a storm of swords. He stretched out his right hand and a stream of light appeared in his hand. Divine sword. Blood of yellow flame. Feeling the stimulation of Ning Wuqing's sword aura, the blood of yellow flame that had just reached Jun Moxie's hands suddenly made a zheng sound and flew up on its own, stopping in midair. The sword's body was shining brightly, and an even sharper sword aura burst forth, automatically meeting Ning Wuqing's boundless sword aura. Divine swords have spirits. Blood of yellow flame had been nourished by Jun Moxie's blood essence for a long time and had been watered by the Hongjun Pagoda's boundless aura day and night. At this moment, it finally had a spirit. Like master, like sword. Jun Moxie inherited the arrogant and unruly personality of the evil monarch. He had always placed himself above the world and looked askance at the masses. This sword naturally inherited this. Although it only had a little bit of spirit, it could not tolerate another sword aura showing off in front of it and jumped up to provoke it. Its master is the evil monarch, and this divine sword is the overlord of swords. Jun Moxie was shocked by this sudden change and hurriedly grabbed the sword in his hand. Ning Wuqing acted as if he did not see this scene and looked at him coldly. Jun Moxie, do you too have the guts to fight us fairly? Do you want to end this life and death feud? Jun Moxie had just recovered from the shock and had no time to think about what had happened to his sword. He was speechless by this sentence. What? Ning Wuqing. How dare you say that? The 18 of you actually want to have a fair battle with us? Ning Wuqing's expression did not change. Lengleng said. That's right. If you use that kind of sneaky assassination trick, it is not what a hero would do. Jun Moxie was so angry that he laughed. I allow you to bully me with your numbers, and yet you say it is a trick. Is this the behavior of a gentleman? There was actually such a thing in the world. Before the battle, they actually set the opponent's way of fighting. Then, they besieged the opponent with their advantage in numbers, and they even said that this was a fair battle. Ning Wuqing, people can be shameless, but they can't be shameless to such an extent. I wanted to give you some face and let you die with dignity and reunite with your second brother. But since you are so shameless, don't blame me for being ruthless. What a pity. I don't know if Ning Fengyi will still be able to recognize Big Brother when he sees him later. Ning Wuqing roared. He suddenly jumped up and flashed in the air. His fists and legs were like sharp blades. They fell on Jun Moxie like a rainstorm. Because every punch was imbued with sword aura, and every kick was as sharp as a blade. It was to the extent that every single strand of hair on his body was filled with invincible sword chi. Ning Wuqing was originally an expert above the supreme level. Now that he had ignited his life's potential, his strength had increased by at least 2 times. Moreover, at the last moment of his life, he had broken through to the state of one with the sword. The current Ning Wuqing, although it was difficult for him to live for long, in terms of his own strength, he was no longer below Mei Shuiyan. In terms of damage, he was even more powerful than Mei Shuyan. After all, every part of his body was equivalent to the sharpest sword. He could really kill with a single touch. Fighting with him alone was equivalent to fighting with dozens of sword aura masters. Although Ning Wuqing's transcendental state was only a flash in the pan and could not last for long, his damage was extremely terrifying. Even if Mei Shuyan were to fight him, she could not fight him head-on. She could only fight him and exhaust his life force. Ning Wuqing's combat strength was not inferior to anyone in the world. It could be said that this was the most glorious moment of his life. He was the real hero of the world. Unfortunately, his opponent was Jun Moxie, a perfect opponent, a natural nemesis. Jun Mo Xia laughed out loud, without a hint of fear. His figure became even more fleeting as he retreated at high speed. Ning Wuqing's eyes were red from killing Jun Mo Xia. He swore to kill Jun Mo Xia, so he chased after him. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, disappeared from everyone's sight in a split second. The remaining 17 masters surrounded Mei Shuyan. Mei Shuyan looked at Jun Mo Xia's direction worriedly. She knew that Ning Wuqing was really in danger at this moment. He was even more dangerous than the 17 people in front of her. If he fought with her, she was afraid that even if she could kill him, she would have to pay a heavy price. So, Jun Moxie wanted to lure the most dangerous person far away, leaving Mei Shuyan time to deal with the 17 masters. Mei Shuyan's mind raced as she turned her head around. The killing intent between her brows instantly intensified. 6 supreme martial artists and 11 supreme martial artists roared and rushed forward. Mei Shuyan shouted and attacked first. She unsheathed her long sword and suddenly appeared in the sky like a shining dragon. Right now, they could only end the battle quickly so that they could go and support Jun Mo Xia. So, Mei Shuyan did not hesitate anymore. She did not even pause. She used the most powerful technique of the Tian Fa Forest, Tian Fa Heaven Punishing Sword. The first technique, break the Milky Way. The second technique, scatter the stars. The third technique, fill the starry sky. The fourth technique, sin the vault of heaven. 4 ultimate techniques were used at the same time. The sword light was as bright as the rain. It was like 2 meteors colliding in the sky. Thousands of dazzling lights filled the sky. Streaks of cold lightning, rays of cold light, and stars, the vast Milky Way, fell down crazily. Such a divine technique shook the heavens and the earth. The ultimate technique of the Tian Fa Beast King killed 17 of the strongest masters of the world. Only cries of surprise could be heard. No one would have thought that Mei Shuyan would actually start fighting with her life on the first move. The extremely bright and resplendent destruction sword light swept through the crowd in a split second, and screams of agony could be heard continuously. The 17 people, regardless of whether they were injured or not, all charged forward with no regard for their lives. The aura was horrifying. Mei Shuyan let out a long roar and used her ultimate move again. Her most powerful and lethal move, Tian Fa Punishes the Heavens, stabbed out violently. This move was also the origin of the name of this sword technique. If even the heavens could punish, what else couldn't it punish? Mei Shuyan's body spun rapidly and turned into a huge light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. Mei Shuyan's body was completely hidden within the light pillar. She was 10 feet above the ground as she flew through the air on her sword. Everywhere she went, screams and the sound of weapons shattering could be heard. Countless broken limbs flew into the sky, Jun Mo Xia's figure drifted, left and right. In the blink of an eye, he had already escaped more than 1,000 feet of space. Ning Wuqing's entire body was bursting with sword energy, chasing from the sky. No matter how Jun Mo Xia changed his direction, he could quickly catch up. In his eyes, there was a kind of cruelty of a cat toying with a mouse. Jun Moxie. Run as far as you can. When you can't run anymore, this old man will deal with you properly. Don't worry, This old man will definitely end your life with one slash. This old man will leave 999 slashes on your body. I'll make you beg for death, but you can't. Don't you like to torture your enemies? Those who torture others will be tortured by others. Karma will not be satisfied. Ning Wuqing realized that Jun Moxie's movements were not very fast. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He roared loudly and suddenly laughed, as if he had gone mad. Jun Moxie didn't say a word. His body moved swiftly and nimbly on the snowy ground in the forest. Ning Wuqing roared and didn't dodge anymore. He crashed into Jun Moxie. Under his unparalleled sword chi, no matter if Jun Moxie used the rocks or the trees to dodge, they were all cut into pieces by him. Along the way, they had actually opened up a wide road. There were rocks in front of him. Cliffs. There was no way forward, and death was behind him. Jun Moxie, let's see where you can run to now. Prepare to receive 999 slashes. Ning Wuqing's white hair fluttered in the wind as he laughed wildly. His demeanor was even crazier. Jun Moxie's body didn't stop at all. When he saw that he was in front of the cliff, he suddenly stopped and looked back. He smiled strangely at Ning Wuqing. Then, he suddenly disappeared. Ning Wuqing, who thought that he was about to succeed, was shocked. He turned around to look around, but did not see a single shadow. Just as he was about to shout, suddenly a rumbling sound came from above his head. Countless huge rocks came crashing down like a mountain. Any random rock weighed thousands of kilograms, and everything within a radius of several hundred feet was completely covered by the rocks. It was like a landslide. No. It was like a landslide. But how could such a landslide happen here? And how could the timing be so coincidental? It couldn't be a coincidence. Since it wasn't a coincidence, it must be man-made. Jun Moxie, this must be your doing. Come out now. Come out if you have the guts. The sword energy on Ning Wuqing's body shone brightly and shot out in all directions. He wanted to rush up directly. A large number of rocks rolled down. There were at least 1,000 of them. Although Ning Wuqing was strong now, and his sword energy was even sharper, he was still being smashed to the point where he screamed in pain. Thousands of huge rocks fell at the same time, and Ning Wuqing had no room to dodge. After trying his best to shatter dozens of huge rocks, Ning Wuqing was finally buried under the ground. The power of Earth. This was the first time Jun Moxie used the power of Earth to launch an attack. The effect was surprisingly good. A shadow flashed and Jun Moxie landed on the rocks. He heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet started to tremble. Jun Moxie was startled. He flew up and hid in the air again. The mountain rock where he was standing just now shook and exploded with a bang. Countless dazzling sword lights shot out. Such a landslide didn't take Ning Wuqing's life. Ning Wuqing's current strength was really shocking. Ning Wuqing's clothes were torn and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. However, his body was filled with endless sword energy. As he flew through the air, he stretched out his arms and circled around his body, sweeping wildly. Suddenly, two extremely strong sword energy, one on the left and one on the right, one on the top and one on the bottom, drew two bright circles in the air. This old monster was really hard to deal with after his advancement. Jun Moxie snorted. Ning Wuqing's sword energy swept but didn't hit any target. He was about to use his sword energy to sense anything when he suddenly felt a chill on the back of his neck. He quickly lowered his head and swung his sword. His arm was his sword. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.